Hello, dear viewers. Support me by subscribing to my channel and share my video if you like it. And also, make sure you comment your thoughts. Now let's start the video.
So you're the reciprocal for all of the power that all of the infinite multiverses generate towards the anthropomorphic entity of death? Natasha asked. Not really and kind of. Harry said, it's really difficult to explain. There are different laws and stuff to different multiverses, but while I'm its representative, I hold the position in all the multiverses, but can only claim a small percentage of the power he doesn't use in the multiverse I currently reside in. That's where a majority of my magical regeneration comes from. It's channeling it for me into a form that best allows for me to use it to do what I do. And what powers does that give you? Natasha asked. Not much really. Harry said, I'm magically probably the most potent caster in any world and can use the Hallows as I see fit. I still have no powers of resurrecting the dead or anything, for which I am glad actually. It did say something about having more responsibility than I used to now that we've spoken, but that I'm already doing what I should be, so it didn't even tell me what that was. That's irresponsible. Natasha scowled. Even if you're already doing it, you should be told so you don't make any mistakes. I had the same thought. It said I'd know if I was doing the wrong thing. Something about who I am will let me know, apparently. Harry said. There are some other things that I needed to know, but I'm not allowed to discuss them with you with anyone really. It has to do with he screamed as he was hit by a massive headache. Harry, Natasha was at his side instantly. What's wrong? Harry held his temples and focused a bit of magic into relieving the pain. Fortunately, it seemed it was short-lived, like a warning. Harry knew instantly why, too. It seems I'm really not allowed to talk about it. Physically incapable, even. He held his head for a couple of seconds longer. It seemed that the promise to keep things about the afterlife secret was binding. Then don't talk about it, Natasha instructed angrily. She was shocked that Harry had bound himself this way, but suspected he had no choice in the matter. An entity which existed throughout all dimensions and multiverses that was in charge of the end of all life, with an infinite amount of power, resources, and information, had decided that her man was to be its representative. Just to skip being bound to a form not of its choosing, this would take some getting used to. I didn't know insinuating or skirting around the edges of what I know was against the rules. Harry said, still rubbing his head even though it wasn't in pain anymore. It was more to help soothe himself from the knowledge his mind shied away from, or I take a step back and look into the eternity of everything forever. A moment of that can be very entertaining. The words death had used to describe something he liked to do on occasion as a pastime. Something Harry suspected might break any human mind just to grasp the smallest fraction of. As Tony had once said, a fraction of infinity is still infinite. Harry shuddered again. Then we'll just not talk about it. Natasha said, if people knew you were putting your mind in danger, they'd understand, so let's rather not freak anyone out and avoid dangerous questions, okay? That sounds like a good idea, Harry said, suddenly feeling better. You know what I'm in the mood for? A whole lot of tequila and some whiskey, Natasha asked with a smile. A whole yes, that, he said with a smile as he looked at his lovely future wife. You really are the best, you know that, so long as you don't forget, she said playfully. I wouldn't dream of it, he said as he led her out and to the bar, where a group of elves were sitting, drinking and talking while listening to music, and the bartender Eldrin practiced spinning the bottles in the air, following the instruction from the TV. Elves were supernaturally predisposed to acts of dexterity, and Eldrin had made Harry jealous with his skill on more than one occasion. They were greeted warmly, and Harry had to tell the people to sit back down. When they made to get up to give their lord and lady some privacy, please people, don't leave just because we show up. The idea of a bar is to invite people to join us. Harry said, if we wanted to be alone, we'd simply stay in the house. Natasha said, thank you, my lord, Zira said from behind him. Harry and Natasha spent the next 10 minutes hugging the nymphs who showed up to greet him. Because there were no guests around, they partook in their favorite drinks, from strawberry daiquiris to appletinis, and soon the air was filled with the sounds of grateful moans until it became too late and the nymphs retired to the grove. Harry had not been taking it easy as he tried to get his mind off of some of the revelations of the day. After his second bottle of fire whiskey and half a bottle of shots, he blacked out. He woke up the next morning and slowly opened his crusty eyes to find his beautiful fiancée lying on his left shoulder looking at him. What bothered him was when he realized someone else was on his right shoulder. Natasha's face soon sported a smile. Good morning, lover boy, she whispered. Harry slowly turned his head and found Zira sleeping there. What happened? Harry asked in a whisper to Natasha. I remember a lot of drinking, but somewhere along the line, it kind of blanks out. Natasha giggled, actually giggled. You don't remember, she asked then. When Harry shook his head, she shook her head as well. Well, don't let her find out, she warned. While we were drinking you had this great idea, you decided to create a new enchanted item, or a pair to be exact. Harry nodded as half a memory came to him. I seem to recall a locket. That's right, Natasha nodded. You decided to enchant 2 lockets with a portal in the hopes that the nymphs could leave the island if they wanted to. That sounds familiar, Harry asked. Did it work? Oh yes, a voice said from his right shoulder. Apparently Zira wasn't as asleep as he had thought. You barged into the nymph house and knocked on my tree until I came out, then you gave me a locket and hung one from one of my branches, and then you apparated all 3 of us to a festival in Belgium without even checking if it would work. Natasha admonished him. Then she smiled again. Suffice it to say, we enjoyed a couple of dances and had a couple of drinks, but when one too many men started flirting, you decided to get us out of there. I didn't do anything stupid, did I? Harry asked. You may have punched a man when he started getting fresh with Zira, but he was fine, just unconscious. Natasha assured him, somehow hearing that didn't bother Harry. Then what happened? Then you brought us all here and many things happened. Zira said with a smile that promised delights no man had known before. You are quite proficient, if I may say so, my lord, she said, and Harry could tell her heart rate had picked up. I think you can call me Harry. Harry said, if you can share my bed you should be on a first-name basis with me. Then he turned to Natasha. Before he could ask again, she just smiled at him and kissed him. You have nothing to worry about, I'm fine, we're fine. Our family just got a little bigger. Though you said my Harry was stopping us from bearing the fruit of his loins. Zira asked. She meant you, Zira, Harry said after taking a moment to sigh in relief. He wasn't certain what was going to happen now, but he couldn't lie to himself either. Zira had become quite close to them both. You're now part of the family. Natasha nodded along and Zira's eyes developed tears. Harry pulled them both close for a hug. And Zira soon calmed as her hands started to wander. Whoa, Harry said, I need to get to work soon. I don't think we have time for that. Now that he was sober, he didn't know how to handle the situation. We could always make time, you're the boss after all. Natasha winked at him. When Harry shook his head, she conceded. I understand, she nodded. Harry was still stressed about the previous day's revelations and the work he was doing to get to Hela. Zira got up quickly, completely naked, and jumped up and down in excitement. Are you still taking me on a tour of your place of work? Apparently Harry had made some drunken promises. He didn't mind, though she'd need to be more dressed than she was, he reflected, after watching her assets bounce along with her. I don't see why not, but you'll have to be able to wait while I handle a couple of things, and you'll need to dress in a manner that befits a workplace. Illusion, Natasha suggested. Cover her in an illusion and she can wear her normal outfit. Harry nodded and got up to go to the shower, but noticed the time. Damn, we're really going to be late if we don't get going now. He cast a couple of cleaning charms over the 3 of them and then he got dressed while Natasha and Zira did likewise. Harry covered Zira in an illusion and then he opened a portal to his office. Running late this morning? Tony asked with a smirk. Only then noticing he had company. Zira, he asked, how are you away from your tree? Harry was able to enchant a locket with a small connection to my tree. Zira said with a smile, I can now go wherever I want. I have never felt so free. Zira was truly exuberant. Harry smiled. Apparently I had won too many last night and ended up apparating us to Belgium for a festival of some sort. Oh, I know, Tony said, smiling again. You called me on a mirror at 3 in the morning and told me to come join you guys. Really? Harry was mortified. Sorry I bothered you. No problem. Tony waved it off. I would have joined. I only went to bed a couple of minutes earlier, but Pepper refused. Tony grumbled for a second, looking like he felt he had missed out. After that call, Harry didn't take long to tire of the atmosphere anyway, and we retired to his chambers on the island. Zira said with a happy smile. Tony's eyes grew wide. Oh really? He asked. Is there something I should know? Not at all, Harry quickly interjected. What happens in my relationships are still private. Relationships? Tony asked. Plural. Let it go, Tony, Harry said sternly, hoping Tony would do just that for once. I'm sorry, but no, Tony said seriously. I need to know if you did something stupid. Where was Natasha during all this? Lady Natasha was there with us, as is only proper, Zira said, suddenly understanding Tony's look of worry. Do not worry, friend Tony. Harry still loves his lady with all his heart. If anything, she and I took advantage of his more malleable state of mind last night. Tony looked between her and Harry, who was blushing as Tony hadn't seen in recent memory. You pulled a ménage? He asked before nodding. Respect. Tony opened a drawer and pulled 2 cigars, then he walked into Harry's office and handed him one. That's for achieving many men's dream. We can puff these bad boys later. First, let's go check out the satellite Friday has been assembling since last night. Harry nodded and put the cigar in his inner pocket before opening a portal to the moon base, where Tony had set up a fabrication array for their off-world tools and vehicles. What did you end up going with? Harry asked as Zira followed them through, having no idea that she was probably the first nymph to ever leave a planet and her tree so far behind. Standard loadout for a space vehicle, Tony said. PMG and rune portal-based air release propulsion for micro-adjustments in alignment while in orbit. Oh, and a sensor array to help achieve orbit to begin with. The non-standard here is the new rune-based telescopic view camera system, which allows for more accurate and higher quality remote viewing than even the NSA has access to. The runes expand the space between the camera's lenses and provides an exponentially larger zoom factor. Literally 50 times more so than was previously achievable. Rocket's rune cluster for this was truly inspired. I could read a newspaper on Earth from orbit and not have to squint, and we haven't even really tried. I suspect I can boost that factor quite a bit still. We also fitted it with a clear lens, which was ruined to see magic, just in case that helps us narrow in on your psycho stepsister. Tony finished. And you set all of this up since last night? Harry asked. What do you take me for? Tony laughed. Are all the components loaded and am I tech? Harry asked. Of course, Tony laughed. All we need now is to load it up and drop it off. When Harry smirked, Tony had a sinking feeling. It's too early in the day for you to look so devious. Harry turned to Zira. Do you trust me? He asked, ignoring Tony. Zira straightened her shoulders, knowing she might be tested in the next few minutes. Yes, Harry, I trust you with my life. Harry nodded and formed a bubble around them and levitated the satellite and them up, and moved to his personal airlock. It had detectors for air pressure and would open for him when he used his space bubble charm, which he did. They were soon floating out into space. Zira had never felt so small. She looked out at the sea of stars and felt the power Harry was using to keep them safe, having decided, apparently on a whim, to travel the stars on nothing but his personal power, not even showing the slightest hint of strain. Instead of fearful of the void around her, she suddenly grasped why he always felt so good to be around. His power, at least to her, was incalculable, and she shivered in delight with the biggest smile on her face. When Harry saw her smile, he was touched to see her trust in him. He nodded at her and looked at Tony, who was acting like it was nothing, but Harry had seen the flash of dread cross his face. Still too soon? He asked. He had been meaning to do this for a while. Tony had confessed to him that he needed to face the fear he had once fallen prey to, and Harry had decided to bring Tony out with him one day. No, Tony said through suddenly chattering teeth that had nothing to do with being cold. I need to do this. Harry noted that his hands were balled into fists and they were shaking suddenly. Are you sure? Harry asked. You look like you're about to have a panic attack. He took him by the shoulders and looked him in the eyes as he said, Focus on your breathing. Control your emotions. They are yours, not the other way around. Tony nodded and closed his eyes for a moment, focusing on the occlumency he had studied so hard to control his emotions, even if he told people it was just for the enhanced recall. A couple of moments later, his heart rate calmed, and when he opened his eyes again, Harry could see the building panic was under Tony's control and slowly fading to the background. Well done. Harry said, Is that enough or do you want to go along? He asked, indicating the nearby satellite. I think I'll go along. Tony said after a moment's contemplation. He was very glad that he was able to regain control. No matter how many times he went into the room to face this fear, it would never be the same as knowing he was actually in space with nothing but a thin layer of magic protecting him from a gruesome fate. If you're sure, Harry asked uncertainly. When Tony nodded, he lifted his hand and opened a portal to Niflheim. They exited above the planet and Zira shuddered. There's not one spot of green down there. She sounded like she was near tears. This is Niflheim, Harry said. We're here to drop the satellite off and then we're going back. Why would you come here? Zira asked in mild shock. Nothing good ever happens here. That's what we're doing here, Harry said. Having looked at Tony for a moment and noting he was still in control. We're hoping to have one good thing happen here. Zira only nodded and watched as Harry aligned the satellite. How's that? He asked Tony. It should be fine, Tony said. We can align it better from the office, but we should go soon just in case the orbit isn't stable, which it likely isn't. It's not the kind of thing you can just eyeball. Harry nodded and opened a portal to just outside the hangar. Let me try something quick, he said as he floated them up to above the dome of the base. He expanded the dome and formed a portal inside the bubble with them, noting the other portal forming normally. Cool, he said, and levitated them through before allowing both the portal and the bubble to collapse in that order, of course. That is cool. Tony nodded as he took a couple of breaths in relief. Could you do that from Earth? He asked. Make a bubble that contains the vacuum of space as you form a portal. Harry wasn't certain. I don't know. The bubble head charm I used to aid in the creation, the space bubble charm, fills the bubble with air. I don't think it will be able to produce enough air to stop the spell from collapsing from the strength of the vacuum. It wasn't meant to take those kinds of pressures from inside. You can figure it out, I'm sure, Tony said with a shrug as Harry finally lowered them into the garden, where Zira instantly sat down, lay back and continued staring at the stars. Until then, at least you have a quicker way of exiting space. Harry nodded but didn't really think too deeply on it. He lay back as well. What do you think, Zira? How does it feel to be the first nymph in history to go into space? I don't have the words, Zira stammered. What had just happened to her went so far above what her mind was ready for. We really just traveled the stars, it's unbelievable. While she was talking to Harry, he heard Tony quickly call Friday and had her monitor the satellite. Harry, we can't stay here long. I need to go check that the satellite is correctly set up and searching. Tony told him once he was done on the phone. Fine, Harry said, opening a portal for Tony. We'll be along in a bit. I'm taking Zira on a tour of the moon base and then HQ. I'll probably be a couple of hours as I have some things to catch up on here. See you later then. Tony nodded, walking through the portal which closed behind him. Harry offered a hand to Zira and once she was up he started walking her through the base. Agent Eric Koenig showed up as if by magic and handed her a green laminate card. He actually showed her more respect than he normally showed Harry. Harry shrugged. It was probably meeting a mythological creature for the first time. Koenig had requested, but had not yet received permission to go on the next company retreat to the island. Harry suspected that was the reason he acted the way he did. Once Harry showed her his personal office, with the perfect view of the stars, she spent a good couple of hours on his couch, just staring out the large floor-to-ceiling windows while he handled correspondence and looked through proposals. By comparison, their visit to EPI HQ was almost tame, except for when people recognized Zira and Harry suspected he'd be receiving a request for a meeting from Fury sometime soon. The nymphs being able to leave the island would make them available, if not for missions of seduction, then for testing occlumency proficiency, without needing to rely on a psychic, which he had refused to do. Harry ended the tour back on his hidden floor where he took Zira through to Bruce's lab, where she'd become the first nymph to see what Bruce did with the ingredients he took from the island. She had been quite impressed. Then Harry stepped her through the door to the more publicly accessible part of the lab, where quite a few graduates from Xavier's Institute were being taught about the basics of potion making by their instructor Dr. Hank McCoy. Zira, Hank interrupted himself in the middle of his speech. How are you here? You are invalidating my previous class by being away from your tree. He said it with a smile. Zira stepped forward and hugged the big blue man. They had had many conversations on the island in the past. My Harry has made it possible for me to move about but stay connected. Zira said, lifting up her locket. This contains a small opening through which I can feel the island and stay connected to it and the rest of the grove. Hank nodded, smiling broadly as he hugged her again. I am really happy for you. Zira smiled happily and nodded before turning and going back to Harry, who was leaning against the wall by the door. Harry, Hank greeted with another nod and smile. Harry had allowed for some of the classes to take place here, as long as the students always harvested their own potions' ingredients, except for those that came from creatures. The rest of the time, Hank commuted between the newly established EPI Magical College, located on the same campus as the other rebranded Shield Institutes of Higher Learning, where he was the professor for both herbology and potions, and his own potions lab, where he was still working on newer and better delivery systems for potions. He'd even had some success turning a select few potions into gel capsules. Bruce had loved the challenge of condensing potions down to a state where it still worked in such a concentrated form. How are classes coming, Professor McCoy? Harry asked. They are going spectacularly. Hank said, the visits to the island has helped, it seems. The students were familiar enough with some of the creatures' magical natures to understand the ingredients better. We also started a study group to prepare for when we started studying potions. One of the kids said, it was one who Harry recognized but didn't know the name of. You did tell us we'd be allowed after we finished high school after all. Harry nodded, I remember. Then he turned to Hank, maybe it would be a good idea to have them create an educational packet for those interested in the class. Hank looked proudly at the class. They are already ahead of you. He said they turned in a project from their private studies to show their desire to get into the first class. Did they? Harry asked, impressed. It's that kind of planning and preparation that will take them far in my company. He said. His words were met by excited but determined faces. Were any of you interested in going into alchemy after that? Only one student nodded. Why so few? Ah yes, the problem is that even if there was a dedicated teacher, alchemy is still quite difficult, Hank said apologetically. We found that only those who studied particle physics and the atomic sciences would be able to understand the basics needed for application. Did you and Bruce have any issues understanding what you were learning? Harry asked, not having realized the requirements of the study. We could hire some people if you need them. He offered. Hank scratched at the back of his head. We manage and Tony has been quite helpful as he has a very wide scope of knowledge to draw from. But we've been hoping to ask you about hiring Maya Hansen to help pick up the slack. He asked hopefully. Maya Hansen, why does that name sound familiar? Harry asked. She's the one that knocked you out so that Aldrich Killian could use you as a hostage against Tony. Hank responded. Oh right, Harry said, snapping his fingers in recognition. Isn't she in prison? She is, but we were hoping that with a contract, her skills and knowledge could be useful again. Hank said. Fury seemed willing to go with it, but said it was up to you, since you choose who works with and has knowledge of the magical. Harry had been unaware that Fury deferred to him in anything, usually running EPI without informing Harry of what was going on unless it was something big that they needed his help or resources for. Sure, they still had the Marauder's Den, but it was unnecessary these days as everything was contract protected. They still met up to discuss things, but it was usually in Fury's hidden room of requirement. Harry had opted to keep Marauder's Den just in case it was ever necessary. How has she been holding up in prison? Harry asked rather than giving an answer outright. He had noted the students moving off rather than stay in the middle of what was obviously not meant for their ears. Apparently some of the inmates discovered that she had been involved with experiments on ex-soldiers, and she had a rough time in the beginning, until she was isolated from the rest. Hank said. Harry thought about it for a moment before nodding. Okay, but you get to tell Natasha I don't want to see her anywhere near anything she's not cleared for, and Fury has to handle whatever security this will require. He said as he counted on his fingers. You're not making this easy for me. Hank said. Any specific reason why? Harry smirked. Why were you the one to bring this up and not Bruce? He asked me to. Ah, I see. Hank finally got it. Harry continued to smirk. Yup. He confirmed. Bruce didn't want to spend all that time on getting through red tape. On the bright side, it's not that difficult a task, the most difficult being telling Natasha, really. Fury probably knows which routes to follow for prisoner transfer or to get her extracted if we don't have the pull we might need, now that we're not necessarily compliant with UN requirements. You might want to talk to Fury about that, Jarvis said as he walked into the lab. Apparently the council has been making strides towards correcting that. Oh really? Harry said as he opened a portal and stepped thought indicating for Zira and Jarvis to follow, waving at Hank as he went. The command room of EPI was built much like the command deck of the helicarrier had been, except that it was bigger and with way more magic in play. Different divisions were represented by people through mirrors on the walls, made to look like windows to adjoining rooms. Physical documents needing signatures and processing floating between people, desks and inboxes, as if transported via telekinesis. Many people's mouths were moving without sound being heard as they went about their business. All of them had the ability to cancel the silencing to be heard by everyone by the press of a button, with another button that allowed only the person standing in Fury's usual spot to hear them, in case it was sensitive information. Fury was not standing in his usual spot, though, so Harry led Zira and Jarvis to Fury's office, nodding at the agents who sprang up to salute him. Harry had asked them not to do it, so obviously Fury had suggested that they do it anyway. Everyone was in on the joke and Harry tolerated it, knowing they wouldn't stop. When they reached Fury's office, Harry knocked and waited for a click, which indicated the door was open. Fury had requested he knock a certain way, but because of the saluting thing he refused. Fury knew it was him and he had many security cameras showing him who was at the door. Security inside EPI wasn't necessarily necessary, but Fury, being the paranoid bastard he was, insisted. When they entered, Harry decided to forego the niceties. What's this I hear about the council actually making themselves useful for once? Jarvis. Fury asked, looking at the PA behind Harry, who was studiously looking anywhere but Fury. Fury sighed but complied. They are hoping to gain more influence with us by getting the UN off our backs and behind us again. If we actually needed it, I'd be grateful. Fury scoffed as he moved closer to hug Zira, not acting surprised to see her at all. The nymphs were the only ones that got away with it and everybody knew to just drop the subject. What do you mean influence? Harry asked. After everything that PI and EPI have been doing, we're basically the most powerful organization on the planet. Fury explained, they will fight for every inch of power they can get within the organization. What's our response to that? Harry asked. Nothing, Fury said with a shrug. We let them do what they want, as long as it keeps them busy. I don't really care. We're not here to pander to their whims, we're here to make actual change. This doesn't sound like you, Harry said. You have something planned, don't you? Fury just looked at him, Zira and Jarvis, before sighing. While they are working so hard to get themselves into our good books, we've been doing favors for people in power. Healing diseases, sharing info and taking out corrupt officials. By this time next year, every world government will be singing our praises, not to mention the citizens. So while the council are keeping themselves entertained, you've been contracting heads of state, kings and prime ministers. Harry said, a look of dawning realization on his face. Nobody knows who they are allowed to talk to, so they all think they're supporting us anonymously while everyone is actually on the same side because they all owe us favors. He looked at Fury and saw the gleam in his eyes. You know, I've never seen you looking quite so devious. Was the council really holding you back this much? Fury smirked. I was never capable of as much as I am here at EPI. Give me resources and manpower and I can do anything. He walked to a cabinet and removed a bottle of 50-year fire whiskey. Harry hadn't given it to him, so he knew Fury must have bought it for a special occasion. When you offered me a place here and told me that you needed the person in charge to be dedicated and to believe in the cause, I saw a change coming. Fury poured 4 glasses and handed 3 of them around. I realized then, for the first time, that there was such a thing as destiny. Not the kind that you follow, but one that you carve out yourself. I saw you carving your own way and making your own possibilities. You didn't need me, but I sure as hell needed to go with you because where you go, good things happen. Don't get me wrong, you find the trouble, but you also fix the problems and then you make it so it can't happen again. When you made that ultimatum, join or leave. That's when I decided to follow someone for the first time in many years. Fury said somberly. Then he lifted his glass, to a world united. Harry nodded and clinked his glass and repeated the toast, followed by Zira and Jarvis. So, Harry started, I don't need to worry about the council. Fury smirked, you don't need to worry about the council. Then he took a sip before seemingly remembering something, but you can put some more people in R&D. We need to keep moving forward. From Brand's reports it seems magic, while not unheard of, is not a well-known power and your kind even less so. We've got an advantage over the rest of the universe and we need to keep our advantages growing. Harry nodded and Jarvis made a note. We have been extending offers for people to enter the classes within EPI and our other contracted allies. Jarvis said, should we start making offers to people that show promise? Harry nodded and looked at Fury. I'm guessing you have someone in mind. I've had a couple of talent scouts put together a list, Fury said. I'll start the process and set up a couple of demonstrations. We can handle it with the resources you've given us. I just needed your go-ahead. Why? Harry asked. It's still your company. Fury said, while I wouldn't hesitate to contract someone myself, this is going to be big. Once we've got a couple of teams that work well together, we'll be putting a think tank together. By the next time the universe throws a monster our way, we'll be able to send them packing. I don't know that we'll have time to train people before Thanos comes. Harry said, I've still got Danvers to call on when that bastard shows up. The things Brand has uncovered about him and his Black Order makes me think we'll need all the help we can get. Fury said, chances are he's already heard about you and has put a plan together to either keep you busy or to take you out of the fight. She's an unknown to him as far as I'm aware. Have you made contact yet? Harry asked, having heard about Carol Danvers. He was quite excited to meet her, but he hadn't been told that Fury had called on her yet. No, Fury said, I'm not risking getting hold of her until there's absolutely no other option. You may want to start thinking about sending her a message anyway. Harry said, with a portkey and a mirror she can be here much quicker. I don't care how fast she can fly. Fury scowled, I'll think about it. That's all I can ask. Harry allowed. The impromptu meeting soon broke up, with Fury congratulating Zira on her newfound freedom again. He would be interested in seeing if one of the nymphs could be persuaded to come work for EPI, but wouldn't do it until they were ready for the real world. Many of them were still recovering from a life spent in fear and abuse. Fury had not been happy to hear that Harry had handled their rescue personally, as he would have employed the entire Ghost Ops division to get rid of those who had mistreated the poor creatures. Harry might have a duty to see justice done, but Fury had no qualms about having a couple of people snuffed when they deserved it, especially after he had met some of the new additions to New Atlantis. When they returned to the island, it was to find a very excited group of nymphs waiting to be told of Zira's grand adventure. She was soon led off telling tales of the festival, the moon base, and the other experiences she had gone through. As Harry watched them leave, his mirror vibrated. Hello, he answered jovially. Where are you now? Natasha's sweet voice asked. I'm at the island. I just dropped Zira off, Harry said as he lifted the mirror to show the house as he approached it. Why, did you hear about Spider-Man's latest adventure? Natasha asked. No, Harry said. Should I be worried? Maybe a little, she laughed. Tony's probably going to be bragging his ass off. It seems Peter caught his first supervillain. Really? Harry asked in shock. Why wasn't I told? Natasha shrugged. Tony was probably already watching and didn't want to get anyone else involved with his protege. Harry nodded and then smiled. Still, his first supervillain at 15, that's impressive. Didn't you have like 3 wins under your belt at that age? Natasha asked. About. Harry confirmed. Not that I'd name myself anyone's role model. Not in that regard maybe. Natasha smiled. You're not a bad person to emulate normally. Why do you think Jarvis wanted to work with you? Stop, you're going to make me blush. Harry joked as he opened a portal to Natasha's office and closed the mirror connection. The only enviable thing about me are my friends. Flatterer. Natasha mocked as she kissed him before sitting down at her desk again to continue writing up a report. You really shouldn't just portal in anywhere, you know. Hill said from behind him. Harry turned to see her standing by the window, apparently watching as one of the operatives snuck through a house in the dark. Harry always tried to open his portals close to a wall when he made them, so that there's a smaller chance of someone being hurt by its sudden appearance. Anything interesting? Harry asked as he walked up to her to look at the screen, ignoring her statement. Not really. Hill said, we're just planting information for a certain Yakuza boss to find. He was getting product from a new source. At first we thought they were onto what we were doing, but it turns out it was part of a scheme to gain more territory by proving his opposition has an inferior product, unknowingly spreading ours further. We're setting it up so he takes over even more territory. How is distribution and infiltration looking? Harry asked. We're getting there, Hill said, a couple more months and then we can unveil our surprise. Good. Harry said, I'm looking forward to finding out how much of an effect this will have. Controlled tests came back with a success rate of 100%. Hill said, depending on what sources people use and how many, I'm estimating a 40 to 50% success rate in our affected areas. Once we set up the next phase, I suspect our success rates will go up. I like your optimism. Harry said, can I see the map? Natasha looked up from her desk. No. Asked us to keep that a surprise. Oh, come on, just a peek. Harry begged, not even a little one. Natasha said stubbornly. And don't even try to pull rank on me, Mr. Potter, you asked for this yourself. Harry sighed, okay fine, but I'm never setting up a surprise for myself again. Hill smirked at him before focusing back on her work. Natasha was still looking at him and asked, so did you stop by only to torture yourself, or was there a purpose? You called me, Harry accused. Yes, and I thought you'd be over at Tony's the moment you heard. Natasha asked with a smile, knowing he'd gotten sidetracked. If you hurry, Spider-Man might still be there. Harry, having suddenly remembered, smiled at her and apparated to Tony's floor. Upon arrival, Tony looked up from the bar. Took you long enough. Hello, Mr. Potter, Peter said from the bar where he was drinking a butter beer. Are you letting him drink butter beer? Harry asked. We're celebrating. And you drank butter beer when you were younger. Tony countered, that's because it didn't do much to my people. Harry said, and this is conjured. Tony finished with a smile. You installed the tap, you should know. Please, Peter pleaded. Harry shook his head but relented. If your aunt finds out that we're contributing to giving you a taste for alcohol, I'm blaming Tony. Everybody takes a sip from their parents as children. Tony qualified. We're just contributing to a more rounded out childhood. But he's not your kid. Harry said as he summoned himself a glass and filled it with butterbeer too. He held out the glass to clink with Peter. Congratulations on your first supervillain. Thanks, Peter said after he took a sip. It wasn't as easy as you guys make it look. It never is, kid, Tony said wisely. You could have the most underpowered villain in the world and he'd still make you work for the win. Think about it, Harry said. Steve often gets stuck in fights with people. He can take them out easily with a show of force, but he tries to do as little damage as possible when possible, and that takes more effort than simply shooting someone in the head. My old headmaster once told me that you have to choose between what is right and what is easy. Peter thought about that, and before he could give his great power quote, Tony spoke up. Whatever happened to you telling your aunt about your powers? I'm also curious about that. Harry said, we've not heard from you. Did something happen? Peter looked shifty like he tended to and then sagged. My friend Ned found out. Okay, now I'm worried about telling too many people. Tony did a spit take. Who's Ned and why don't I know about this? He's my friend and I didn't want you zapping his memories. Peter defended. He was actually quite useful while I took out the bad guy. Harry laughed. This isn't funny, Tony said indignantly. We can't have random people know about this stuff. It's his secrets to tell Tony. Harry said, sobering. We have to trust that he knows his friend well enough to protect his secret. He turned to Peter. He's being responsible with the knowledge, right? Peter was refusing eye contact. What did he do? Tony asked dangerously. He told the entire class that I know Spider-Man in gym last week. Peter admitted finally. Friday, Tony said. I'm making a list now. Friday said as pictures from all of Peter's classmates started appearing on a screen. Even the gym teacher's face appeared on the screen. Should I send the information to Director Fury? No, Peter interjected. No, you can't have my entire class taken out. Geez, kid, what kind of monsters do you take us for? Tony asked. We've got a division set up for memory modifications. What we need to do now is decide if we want Ned to keep the information. Harry said seriously. He doesn't sound like a very good friend. He was trying to help me get a girl's attention. Peter defended lamely. Even he knew that Ned had overstepped in that situation. If it wasn't for that, Liz's dad would never have worked it out, even with the Stark internship. Listen, kid, we're not going to tell you how to live your life or even who you want in on your secrets. Tony said, I mean, look at me. I told people on national television that I was Iron Man, but that's me. I could afford to. If I hadn't, my life would be completely different now. Not necessarily better, mind you. Harry interjected. Fair enough. Tony conceded, but you don't have my resources to keep your people safe. Peter was following where they were leading him. His experiences from earlier that day proved that he needed to keep his secrets to himself. Couldn't you give Ned and my Aunt Porky thingies? He asked. We could, Tony said, if they were under contract. And while you don't tell us what's going on, we can't protect anyone. Harry finished for him. Anyone else we should know about? Tony asked with a serious look at Peter. What about your girlfriend, the prettiest cheerleader? How about the school bully? Did you tell them? Peter took a deep breath before admitting, Mr. Toombs also knows. Your bad guy knows your secret identity. Tony asked incredulously. Tell me Ned didn't have something to do with that. Harry didn't wait. He pulled out his mirror and called Fury while Tony was berating Peter. When Fury answered, Harry quickly informed him of the situation. Let me get this straight, Fury started. The Spider Kid's secret identity has been in the hands of a guy who just tried to steal from one of our own transports, and he hasn't even told us about it. Has Stark not taught him anything? Tony winced before turning to Peter. Yeah, you really screwed the pooch on that one. Fortunately, he's still in our custody. Fury said, he's been through questioning. But I'm thinking he can take a second set of questions. This time we'll make sure nobody else knows. Thank you, Director. Harry said, don't mention it. Fury said seriously, to anyone, I really don't like feeling like I'm cleaning up after this kid. Get him through training and set him up with a permanent port key. I want him debriefed from now on. If he's going to jump into these situations, he needs to know to follow protocol. Fury hung up the connection and Harry turned to Peter. Sorry about that. He apologized. Yeah, now you're on Fury's radar, Tony agreed. We hope to save you from the manual. There's a manual, Harry and Peter asked together. You didn't know? Tony asked with a smirk. Everyone has to follow procedures you and Fury set up when you created EPI, something about constant vigilance. Those were made official, Harry asked. I thought we were just spitballing. Some of those protocols were super redundant. They still are, but we all follow the same rules, except apparently for you. Tony scoffed. Benefits of being the boss, I suppose. Fortunately, you've never needed to go through a full debriefing. Friday said, you've had me sending all video footage to EPI when you were on the field. That does admittedly save me some time. Tony said, then he noticed Peter looking nervously between them. Worried, what did he mean training? Peter asked, you need to learn how things work. Tony said, I'll ask Sam if he can walk you through it. He's been working with new recruits and helping them adjust to life as part of EPI. Apparently he likes being close to all the vets and people who want to re-enlist. Sam, Peter asked. Falcon, Harry clarified, he's kind of new too. But before that we need to sort out your other problem. Tony said. He turned to Harry. Are we doing this old school or are you putting a twist on it? Wait, what are you talking about? Peter asked desperately. Sorry kid, you've given us no choice. Tony said. Harry nodded along. We can't let your friend be a threat to your and your aunt's safety anymore. You can choose whether we tell her, but Ned has proven himself untrustworthy. Even if you trust him, he needs to sign a contract at least, because it makes it impossible for him to give you up, even under mind control or torture. Tony said. Torture? Peter asked, only now realizing how serious this was. Do you trust Toombs? Tony asked sarcastically. How sure are you that he didn't tell someone who has told someone, etc.? Peter couldn't answer. The chances were Toombs' friend who was waiting outside the school for him probably knew. Exactly, it's not just your life that's in danger. Your choice to be Spider-Man puts others in danger. Fortunately, Harry interrupted, we have an option to help with that. 1, contract in your safe. 2, and you have a proper support system at home. We'll take care of Ned first though. Tony said. He looked at the ceiling. Friday. EPI has been notified. Friday said instantly, having waited for confirmation. Ned Leeds has been located. He's currently at the Parker residence. The rest of the class, Tony asked, will arrange for the professor to use his methods to secure the knowledge. Harry said. Good idea. Tony said. That Cerebro thing scares me, but it's good to know we're on the same side. Okay, stop, Peter said. What are you talking about? What are you going to do? Professor Xavier helps us out when we need to modify memories, Harry explained. I can do it too, but I'm not as good as him. The professor will simply check and see if there's any danger of anyone outing you. If necessary, he'll remove memories or modify them. And you just let him do that to people? Peter asked. We asked him to, kid. Tony said. It's all done very professionally, of course, and privacy is protected via contract. Unless he finds someone that is a danger to others or themselves, he can't even tell Harry of what he learned. So it's like a doctor thing? Confidentiality? Peter asked. Then he nodded. Okay, fine, but no erasing Ned. He may have made a mistake, but he'd never knowingly sell me out. Fine, Tony said. He was still not happy about the situation. He turned back to Harry. So old school or something more impressive? It's almost dinner. Harry mused. Should I get the chef to start on dinner at the island and then invite our guests? We could have them picked up by Quinjet and then open a portal, Tony said. It's less kidnap-y that way. Is Pepper available? Harry asked. Later that evening, a Quinjet appeared through a portal above the island and came down for a vertical landing. When the door opened, a female voice was heard saying, I'm just saying we can't have gone very far. The trip was less than 5 minutes. What the F, May? Peter interjected. I was telling you there's a lot going on here you don't understand. How the hell are we at the beach? May persisted, as they made it out. A butler seemed to appear out of nowhere. Good afternoon. If you would please follow me to the bar area for refreshments, you are expected. The butler turned, having ignored May's shout of alarm at his sudden appearance, and started walking to the bar. When they reached the pool, only a couple of nymphs were swimming around lazily, but they waved happily at the possible new friends. Eyes front, boys, May said to the silent boys. Ned had yet to say anything, having been warned by Peter to keep his mouth shut. The stress on his friend's face convinced him that it was very important not to make a sound. That did not affect his ability to watch the apparent supermodels who looked at him in curiosity, rather than outright ignoring him like he was used to. He really wanted to say hi, but looked away reluctantly at May's words. Peter had been here before and was able to keep from staring. He did take a couple of glances, though. Tony Stark got up from his chair by the bar where he had been talking to the bartender, sitting with 2 other women. Hi there, May, he said, warmly offering a hand to May and shaking hers. He then looked at Ned. Mr. Leeds, he said coldly, then he turned back to May. Come, let's get you a drink. May was astounded at meeting the world-famous Tony Stark. He even knew her name. It took her a moment, but she soon found her words and said, hi. A moment later, she followed that up with, I'll have whatever is good. When the bartender asked her what he could get her as she took the offered seat where Tony was sitting with 2 women already. Pepper Potts she recognized, but she didn't recognize the redhead. Here you go, Harry said, handing her a Bahama Mama infused with the newest creation from SBB Breweries. May took a sip and her heart skipped a beat as the magical effect hit her and a magical wind blew through her hair, making her feel like she just arrived at a holiday destination. A feeling of welcoming and acceptance hit her and she looked at the drink in wonder. This is a really good drink. What's it called? It's a Bahama Mama. Harry said. It's a cocktail with coconut rum, specifically a new kind of rum from SBB Breweries. I've heard of them. 1 bottle of their whiskey would cost me my entire month's rent, May said, still looking at the drink. Well, don't worry about that here, Tony said. Everything is on the house. Of course it is, Pepper laughed. Since you own equal shares of SBB with Harry and Bruce, you own part of SBB, May asked. A third, yes, Tony said easily, along with Bruce Banner and him. He said, pointing a thumb at the bartender. Who? May asked, looking up as if seeing the bartender for the first time. She had a look of confusion before a sudden look of recognition crossed her face. You're Harry Potter. Nice to meet you, Miss Parker, Harry confirmed. May, please, May said with a blush as Harry took her hand and kissed the air above it. Then I insist that you call me Harry. Harry said. You're laying it on a little thick, aren't you? Tony asked Harry after looking at Peter, who looked mortified at how his aunt was blushing at the attention. Harry is always a gentleman, Natasha said as she walked up to May and held out her hand. Natasha Romanoff, the Black Widow, May asked, shocked. How many Avengers am I meeting today? Maybe 1 or 2 more, Tony said with a smirk. Natasha and Harry are engaged, by the way, so don't flirt too hard. Their girlfriend might just get jealous. Tony, Pepper exclaimed. Now's definitely not the time for that. Jealousy makes you nasty, Natasha said with a smirk. Right, Tony scoffed. Then he turned to Peter and Ned. There's a non-alcoholic butterbeer tap here if you want. Yes, please, Peter said instantly, easily accepting the change of subject. May wouldn't make it that easy, though. Girlfriend, Tony smiled, but before he could answer, Harry spoke up. I know, right? I was the last one to find out, too. Then he turned and waved at the model who was floating around the pool on a pool chair. Her name is Zira. She's one of the special residents here on the island, Natasha said with a fond smile. There are also extenuating circumstances which required at least one of her people to be in a relationship with Harry. Fortunately, she's great company. Our personal lives isn't why we asked you to join us for dinner, though, Harry said. He turned to Peter and asked, are you ready to proceed as planned? Peter nodded, and while Harry was retrieving his pensive tablet, he looked at his Aunt May. I have some difficult news to give you. May was suddenly all nerves. She had known something was going on, of course, but he had refused to tell her what was going on. One part of her had feared that he had knocked up a girl at school, but another part of her had hoped for it since there were so many worse things he could tell her. Now in the presence of these people, she had no idea what to expect. What is it, Peter? Peter swallowed the sudden lump in his throat and continued. 8 months ago, while we were on that field trip to Oscorp, something happened. He went on to explain about the spider bite and the discovery of his powers. That was followed up with a visit to the Pensive to see the events for themselves. Harry told her he'd explain how it worked later. May was just this side of livid when Peter was finished, stating that Tony gave him the suit. You're sending Peter out there to fight people with guns, what's wrong with you? May, listen to me, Peter interjected. I was going out there already, Mr. Stark was trying to protect me. Then he should have told me, May said. Then she looked at Peter with pain in her eyes. You should have told me. I'm sorry, May. Peter said. May wasn't done though. She turned to Ned. And I guess you knew as well. I thought you were his friend. How do you feel about Peter putting himself in danger? Ned made to reply with half a smirk on his face, but May interrupted him. So help me, if you say it's cool, I'm going to cut you up and feed you to the wildlife on this island. Nah, we keep the carnivores well fed on things better suited to their diet. Came a voice from the bushes, where Logan appeared. Most of them are also locked up for your protection. May stood up and looked at Logan with shock written on her face. James, is that you? Hi, May. Logan said with a soft smile Harry hadn't seen there before. What are you doing here? May asked. I work here. Logan said. I take care of the wildlife. May had apparently lost her train of thought for the moment as she closed the distance between them and gave Logan a tight hug. You never came to visit. You still owe Ben that cigar. Logan looked sad. I was sorry to hear of his death. When I heard, I thought I'd just be in the way. You're a moron. May said. I know you were closer friends with Richard and Mary, but you really should have visited. I'm sorry, Logan said. Come, I can tell you a bit more about what Peter's been getting up to. You knew? May asked with a sudden look of anger on her face. Of course I knew, Logan scoffed. I helped train him. Why? May almost begged. Please, Mary and Richard's kid, stay out of trouble. You're kidding yourself. Logan scoffed. Only thing any of us could do was get him trained up and give him the tools he needs to protect himself. I can't lose him too, May pleaded. You don't understand. Logan gave her a flat look. You know that I do. Then he sighed. Listen, I know more than you do at this moment. Harry and Tony have taken every precaution short of blocking his powers. And don't even ask them to do that. Harry probably could, but he never would, not without Peter himself asking for it. May seemed to consider this for the moment. Then she nodded and walked back to the bar with Logan. When she sat down, she looked at Harry. What is James talking about? Harry had been mostly quiet and supportive of what Peter said. We actually have an offer for you, he said as he pulled out a contract. But you'll be free to say yes or no. As long as you sign this contract. May read it over, asked the same questions as everyone and finally signed. Ned wasn't given a choice. He was told to read it carefully, but Harry planned to have his memory wiped anyway if he refused to sign. That means you don't get to say things like Peter is friends with Spider-Man in front of 30 people. Tony said dangerously to the suddenly pale Ned. You didn't, May and Logan exclaimed at the same time. What kind of friend are you, kid? Logan wanted to know. I didn't know it would get him in trouble. Ned spoke for the first time. I was just trying to get Liz to notice him. Yeah, it turns out Liz's dad was a bad guy, Peter said, who figured it out due to your telling random people things you had no right to tell. Tony said with a tone of voice stating he'd very much like to kick the kid off the island. Ned's face lost all color at the thought. I didn't know. I'm so sorry, Pete. It doesn't matter now. Logan spoke up. Just sign that contract and you won't be able to do it again. When almost everyone there looked at him with shock on their faces, he said, he's a stupid kid. He wasn't malicious about it. Then he smirked evilly as he looked at Ned. Besides, if he had gotten Peter hurt, he said as he let his claws come out, I'd have gotten even. I was almost Peter's godfather after all. Ned almost pissed himself as he rushed to sign the contract. Peter hadn't known that. Apparently Logan was closer to his parents than he knew. Once Ned had signed, Harry summoned the contracts and made them vanish. Welcome to New Atlantis. My name is Harry Potter, also known as Ghost of the Avengers. The island is home to a refuge for magical creatures and plants. I do magic. I'm a wizard. Don't call him a magician or he'll turn you into a farm animal. Natasha said with a mischievous smile. Ghost? Ned asked in awe. I know who Ghost is. He reached across the counter, apparently forgetting his fear in the face of meeting one of his favorite supers, until his hand was shocked by the automatic protections on the bar. Nonetheless, he looked up while holding his hand and said, It's a genuine pleasure to meet you, sir. Harry reluctantly reached over the bar and shook his hand. I can't wait to tell people I shook Ghost's hand. Harry just smirked, but Tony outright laughed. You can't. Not unless you want to forget meeting him. Logan informed him. Did you already forget the contract? I can't even tell people I met Ghost. I'm not telling people his secret identity or anything. Ned argued, "You know what, kid, go ahead and try," Tony said with an evil smirk. Ned blanched again and then looked sullenly at the spot his contract had disappeared from before he smiled again. "I still got to meet him," he mumbled to himself. "So what steps have you taken to protect Peter?" May asked. "Besides the suit that has many protections and features to keep him safe, including being bulletproof," Tony asked. "Harry set him up with a portkey for instant extraction, and he placed a ward at your house to keep undesirables away." "Ward, portkey?" May asked, looking at Harry. "A ward is a form of magical protection which reacts to bad intentions," Harry explained. "If someone wanted to break into your apartment, they'd think they left the stove on at home or something and quickly leave. A portkey is a form of instant travel, which can get him from any dangerous place directly to our medical department for treatment, should it be necessary." Harry conjured a coin, concentrated on it, and tossed it to May, who caught it. "Say test and you'll be transported to the other side of the pool." May was about to say it when Logan suddenly put his hand on her mouth. "Put any electronics on the counter first. You don't want your phone destroyed, do you? Magic has a bad effect on electronics," said. May complied and put her handbag on the floor, which held her phone, the only piece of technology she had. Then she said the activation word and landed on the other side of the pool. "That was fun," May said with a smile, "like a roller coaster." "That's what I said," Harry exclaimed in triumph. "Some people complain about the sensation. I always rather enjoyed it." The gathered people enjoyed dinner, only experiencing one interruption when Wanda arrived with Jarvis, giggling like a schoolgirl as she led him towards the guest house where she was still staying. Wanda also blushed like a schoolgirl when she realized they had been caught trying to sneak to her place. Tony had objected, even if he was slightly proud of Jarvis, not that he'd ever admit it. As it was a Friday, and since May had decided to take Harry's offer of employment straight off the bat, considering it would put her in a place to support Peter if he ever needed it, they took rooms in the guest house for the evening. Logan had offered to handle May's tour. Ned had to go back home as he hadn't arranged to sleep at Peter's place. Harry took him directly home to save him some time. He hadn't needed to give him any warnings. Ned knew he was on thin ice. He'd be disappointing Tony by never breaking the contract. Apparently he'd rather hoped Ned would mess things up. The next day there was a call from Xavier, who had some interesting news. Apparently Michelle Jones, or MJ, had figured out that Peter was Spider-Man as well, but wasn't planning on telling anyone. Harry just sighed and got the location of the girl's home. He took Peter with him. Harry went invisible and had Peter handle the conversation. He knocked, and when MJ answered the door, Peter asked her if she'd like to go for a walk. MJ agreed easily, much to Peter's shock. She didn't even ask how he knew where she lived. When they were at the local park, Harry cast some privacy spells and revealed himself in his ghost armor. "Peter, why are you hanging out with Ghost?" MJ asked. She didn't think he knew what she suspected. "I'm sorry, MJ," Peter said, after Ned blabbed. "EPI had to take steps to protect the information. We are here now to see if we can get you to sign a contract to protect my secret and theirs." "What secret are you talking about?" MJ asked. "Do you know who Professor Charles Xavier is?" Harry asked. MJ blanched. "You had someone go through my private thoughts. He's only allowed to look for our people's secrets. He is literally incapable of giving people's private secrets away when we ask him to search memories," Harry said. MJ's blank face looked completely unconvinced. "Trust me," Peter said, "you'll like what comes next." Harry opened a portal and soon they were all sitting at the bar. After everything was explained, MJ signed the contract happily, especially since the contract protected her from ever being read like she had been. She took the tour along with May while Peter accompanied them on a flying broom. The magic they saw on the island, especially the unicorns and hippogriffs, soon made believers of the ladies, and by the end of the day, Peter and MJ had started what Harry called the mating dance. Harry liked her. Her sardonic wit and understated intelligence made her a fascinating girl to talk to. He thought he might like seeing her at PI at some point. He made a mental note to start his own internship program. Harry was surprised to note a similar dance occurring between Logan and May. He smirked as he passed a two-way portkey to Logan on the sly with a wink. Logan didn't acknowledge it one way or the other, but he gave May the portkey by the end of the weekend anyway, telling her that she could bring Peter with her if he needed advice or someone to train with. The room of requirement was open to him after all. MJ had to go back home on Saturday evening for dinner, but Harry suspected they were still chatting by the way Peter was constantly on his phone after she left. By Sunday they had arranged for May's immediate move from the emergency ward at the local hospital to start her training and working at EPI. It came as a welcome surprise to her that her new job paid much better than she was used to and could now afford to work less hours and spend more time with Peter. Peter was at least happy to find out that Tony's threat to connect May to his suit's surveillance system was a joke. It was considered against EPI's policies to do so as it infringed on people's basic human rights. They were only allowed to do so for their agents when permission was given. Most of the agents appreciated the backup, so agreed easily, but Peter, being a teenager, refused outright. After Peter's situation was handled, things went back to normal. Only 1 week passed before Tony's efforts paid off. Hella had been found. "What do you have for me?" Harry asked Tony as he walked into his office. "See for yourself," Tony said. "She's just been standing there looking at nothing." Harry looked at the screen and saw an image of a beautiful woman with unkempt hair just staring off into nothing. There were a couple of Dementors around her, but they seemed to just ignore her. At least the old dwarf Varco had been right. It seemed the Aesir were immune to their effects. "When did you find her?" Harry asked. "About 20 minutes ago." Tony said. He turned from the screen. "What's the plan?" "I'm thinking we send her a machine that we can talk to her through. Use the satellite as a relay," Harry suggested. "We could do that," Tony said. "I'm assuming you decided to keep Loki's suggestion in mind about not using magic around her. She can obviously sense magic and is waiting." Loki said as he entered the room. "Did you not notice? She's staring in the direction where we entered through the pathway." Tony changed the view quickly and Friday marked their point of entry. "Son of a bitch," he swore. "She's seriously just standing there waiting. She's had thousands of years to perfect patience." Harry said, "One way or another she'll be ready for contact. You must be careful, Harry." Loki said, "She'll have been planning for an escape for all this time. If you give her the slightest chance, she'll grab it to escape." Harry nodded. "I've set up a workshop on Svartalfheim. It's protected by Fidelius. I will set up an area there and we can use that as our starting location. Even if she somehow escapes Niflheim, she'll just end up on another dead planet." "That's a good idea," Tony said, nodding. "Friday, order us some building materials. We're building a base on Svartalfheim." "Wait, a whole base?" Harry asked. "A better testing area you'll never find." Loki agreed. "Once this issue with Hela is resolved, it would be the best place to send people like Rocket who just want to destroy things." "Nah, we've got that covered," Harry said. He comes to the island often to give Groot some time with the nymphs, then he spends some time in the room, where he uses whatever guns he can think of to destroy targets and kill as many bad guys as he likes. Recently, he's been focused on blowing up Ego's planet over and over again. It's truly a spectacular thing to see. That might be a good selling point to someone like Hela. Loki mused. "If she's as bloodthirsty as we think, a place to constantly fight and kill enemies would be something she'd love access to." "I agree," Tony said. "Having one of those as a bargaining chip would be very useful." "We can, but then we need to hide it first," Harry said. "Otherwise it's just another source of power." "Excuse me for interrupting, Mr. Potter, but why not use magic inhibiting cuffs?" Jarvis said from his side of his mirror. "I remember you mentioning them at some point." "Would that work?" Harry asked. "My magic isn't exactly like theirs after all. Technically your magic is more all-encompassing." Loki said, "Something that could inhibit you would definitely inhibit her." Harry thought about it for a moment, and finally nodded. "That could work, thanks Jarvis." "No problem, Mr. Potter." Jarvis smirked before he turned back to his computer, where he was busy designing a new runic device that could potentially be used to reproduce any kind of liquid temporarily, as long as a proper sample is given to the device. It was a ways off from being completed, but he wasn't in a hurry. He hoped to make a device that could be used like Harry's enchanted taps. Jarvis' latest device was a simple laser engraver with one function: to apply the rune scheme that they put on conjured MSC shells to keep the magic from dissipating too fast. It was requested by Harry as he was working on a new project to create stored spells on conjured items. Harry was still working on that and hadn't achieved success yet. "I guess I've got some research to do then," Harry said. "I've never made magic suppressing cuffs before." "No need," Tony said. "We already know how to make that with runes." Harry's eyes narrowed as he looked at Tony. "And why do you know how to do this?" Tony looked back at him without a hint of shame. "My tech," he said simply. "Right," Harry said in realization. Applying that same rune cluster would achieve exactly what they wanted with only a couple of small tweaks. "That makes sense. We'll still need to test its efficacy on both Harry and myself." Loki said. "Agreed," Harry said. Tony decided to handle that project, while Friday put together a device that they could drop from orbit rather than opening a portal on the surface. It took only a couple of days and quite a bit of testing, but they soon had working MI cuffs that was tamper-proof and worked on both Loki and Harry. When the time came, Harry called the Avengers together and explained his plan. Except for Thor, for obvious reasons. Steve, Tony, Natasha, Bruce, and Clint from the original Avengers. The new recruits were Bucky, Logan, Wanda, Pietro, Rhodey, Jarvis, and Sam. Loki was also there, though he was definitely not considered an Avenger, not that he wanted to be really. Steven wasn't there either, but he had yet to join them, concentrating rather on setting up protections for the Earth and expanding on the protections currently in place. Peter had been vetoed out as he was still getting used to following protocol. Aunt May was still of the opinion that off-world missions were not in his wheelhouse yet. Harry didn't mind giving her veto rights when Peter wasn't strictly necessary, even if he was now considered part of the team because Fury wanted him following their rules. "I'm in," Steve said instantly. He didn't like the idea of someone stuck on a planet all alone for thousands of years with only demonic-sounding creatures to keep her company. "Me too," Bucky and Logan said at the same time. Bucky had only recently decided to join the Avengers. He was not completely over his time as the soldier, but he wanted to be useful again. Sitting in his apartment had been driving him mad, so he moved into the Avengers Manor where he could spend some time meditating with Bruce and both Hanks every day and training with the team in the room. He still refused to kill anyone, but Harry hardly had a problem with that. He tried to preserve life whenever possible anyway. "I don't know that I want to make it seem like we're trying to gang up on her," Harry said. "That's only if we can convince her to put the cuffs on in the first place." Loki reminded him, "If she does and then comes through the portal, she won't expect you to be alone." Tony said, "She was a general, remember, she would probably respect a show of force." "I'm not going to her as a fighter," Harry reminded them. "I'm trying to be a brother. A good brother can still have friends." Jarvis said he was planning on accompanying them as the Vision, but for now he was just himself. "You all realize that she's the goddess of death, right?" Loki asked. "Best as I can tell, she's more aligned with war and killing than death itself." Harry said, "I have it under good authority that nobody has true reign over death." "Why do you say that?" Steve asked. He didn't agree that any of these Aesir were gods, being very happy when Harry refused being referred to as a god as well. He preferred blessed. And Steve could get behind that any day. "If she was in any way associated with death, she'd simply want you to die and you'd get sick and die or have a heart attack." Harry said, "She wants to fight and kill, so that's my reasoning." Even Odin said that she got the name for her prowess with a sword and conquering her enemies. "You have a point, but that doesn't change how dangerous she is." Loki continued. "When she's fully powered, maybe." Harry said, "Right now. She's been cut off from Asgard for so long that she probably has very little power." Loki didn't like making assumptions, but they hardly had the option to confirm any of this with Odin. Harry refused to call Heimdall to get more info, not wanting to get his friend in trouble. His thoughts were interrupted with the arrival of Thor. "Are you planning a fight without me?" he asked of the assembled Avengers. Bruce said intelligently. "Fear not," Thor said. "I have been informed of your plans." He looked at Harry. "If you didn't want him to know, you would have discussed this somewhere Heimdall could not see you, like at your office." "I didn't want to get either of you in trouble," Harry said, "but I also thought he could keep watch in case something goes horribly wrong." "Well, he informs me that you have taken steps to not break the letter of the law if not the spirit," Thor said with a smile. "Since you are breaking no laws, I see no problem with visiting with my brothers as they go about their business. Should the opportunity arise for good fight, I'd enjoy that too." Harry smiled gratefully at Thor. "Thanks, bro, it's what family is for." Thor grinned back. "Now tell me of your plans so that I can tell you that you're doing it wrong as any older brother would." The Avengers all ended up deciding to join Harry. Natasha had contacted Fury, who had decided to add his own plans to the mix. When he realized Harry could not be persuaded to leave his plans behind, they broke up for the day after their discussions, and planned to leave in the morning, giving everyone time to prepare should the worst occur. Harry's day wasn't over yet since he was making the new room of requirement and then security port keys. It would not allow someone to activate their port key with any additional people as passengers. Just in case, he planned to bind the port keys by blood as well. He was taking 0 chances, so he allowed for a full extra day to pass, while he did everything he could to protect his people. The next morning, after everyone including both Ghost Squad's Fury was sending along, were paired to their new port keys, Harry opened a portal to the new area, which he had furnished with the barest of furnishings. Nothing conjured either. Once they were through, he appeared in the hangar on the moon where the drop package was located. He levitated it out and left the device close to the satellite they had set up to search for Hela. Then he went to join his friends on Svartalfheim. "We good?" Tony asked as he tapped away on a console. He was already logged into the package and navigating it with the onboard thrusters towards where Hela waited. He was aiming to drop the package in front of her so that she would see its landing since she was still eerily staring at the same spot. "Yup," Harry said with a bit of a smile. He couldn't help himself, he was becoming excited. The prospect of an older sister, somehow exciting him more than he knew he'd be now that the time drew close. "Everyone ready here?" Steve looked around at his team. They were varied in their skill sets, but everyone had unanimously decided to be there for their mutual friend. Harry had opened so many doors for everyone here, solving problems as he went, without seeming effort or caring for costs, simply to help his friends. He was proud to call them all his own friends and teammates. I think we are Harry's. Harry nodded in thanks when he received nods and different forms of affirmation from the people around him. Thor, Loki, Steve, Bucky, Sam, Logan, Natasha, Tony and Bruce stood with him today. The others were on standby at Phase 2 or Plan B depending on what happened. Thanks, he said before turning to Tony. How long till the package arrives at the destination? Almost there, Tony said as he continued watching the screen. The package had been designed to drop to the target within minutes, and soon deployed its parachute, softly laying it down. The octagonal tube then opened and folded out to reveal a large holographic projection of a screen through which they would be visible once Hela arrived. They only waited a couple of minutes, watching as she started moving from her location via the satellite still on her. Her face looked amused as she approached the drop location. Tony tapped a command and suddenly the holographic screen came to life. "Hi there," he said before he turned the camera on Harry with his friends arrayed behind him before he got up and joined them. "Who are you?" were her first words. She spoke calmly and with a certain bemusement. "Hi," Harry started. "I'm Harry James Potter Odinson, Prince of Asgard and King of New Atlantis. Are you Hela Odinsdottir?" Hela looked at him with a certain gleam in her eye. "Truly, are you the one that was meant to replace me? Could Odin not spawn another heir after he banished me to hell?" "Nay," Thor said stepping forward. "Harry is our youngest sibling by adoption. I am Thor Odinson. Until recently I thought I was the firstborn of the crown of Asgard. I am Loki Odinson," Loki said also stepping up behind Harry. "I am also adopted but by the power of Asgard and that of the royal blood." "Interesting," Hela said. "Odin has not yet passed, so I wonder. How many laws are you breaking, contacting me?" Harry smirked, but before he could answer, Loki spoke up. "No law has been broken, and we hope not to break any going forward. When our youngest sibling," he said putting a hand on Harry's shoulder, "found out about your imprisonment a short while ago, he set out to correct what he felt was a grave injustice. I am here only to support him, as he is the reason I myself am not imprisoned and have sworn myself to my family's protection." "Loki speaks the truth," Thor said also placing a hand on Harry's shoulder. "We would not be here if not for Harry, so please sister, hear him out. He is your biggest chance at freedom. I too would not mind having a bigger family," he said. "And who are those I see arrayed behind you?" Hela asked. Tony spoke up. "We are the Avengers, Earth's mightiest heroes." Bruce interrupted. "But we are not here for a fight, we're here to support our friend Harry. But should there be a fight, you'd stand with him," Hela said with a smirk. "I haven't had a good fight in many years. What if I decide to stretch my muscles? You would be free to do so as long as you put on the bracers we have included in the package," Tony said as he pressed a button and the magic inhibiting cuffs made to look like black and gray bracers to fit in with her outfit were presented to Hela. Hela examined the cuffs and scowled. "You would stop me from commanding my power. Why would I do this? I would be helpless before you." Harry spoke up again. "They are inhibiting cuffs. If you put them on, we will open a passage for you to meet with us off of Niflheim. When you are here with us, we will discuss the requirements for your release from them and potential release back to Asgard. You do not have the authority," Hela said, much as Loki once had. "You are correct, of course," Thor said, "but that does not mean I will not have the authority. I am to be coronated in a scant few months. When I am, and if I am convinced that you are capable of controlling your bloodlust, I will have no reason not to reinstate you to Asgard and your power. I must be able to trust you, however." Hela considered this. "So you, the would-be king of Asgard, would return me to my rightful place, which would then make me queen? I think not. You are playing another game." "No games, sister," Harry said. "I have a means by which I can enforce compacts by the very power of your own life. I have been warned by many that you would be unreasonable and quite incapable of rationality, but it seems you have somehow retained your sanity throughout these many years. Please don the bracers and join us for a civilized discussion. I give you my word that you will be given your freedom of them by the end of the day. So long as I return to hell," Hela asked with narrowed eyes, a mocking tone in her voice indicating that she was no fool. "Listen, lady," Tony spoke up with a bit of irritation in his voice. "Do you think he went through all of this trouble just to mess with you? He's been working his ass off to try and help you. Don't throw it in his teeth just because you would have taken advantage of the situation." The affirmative nods and slight looks of disgust from some of the watching faces convinced her that she'd be better off at least attempting to discuss this. If she saw an opening, she'd take it. She doubted this adopted brother of hers could really bring her freedom. But this was just another battle of wills and she'd come out the better for it. Hela looked at Harry. "I have your sworn word that you will release me from these constraints should our talks not bear any fruit for you," Harry nodded. I will at least listen to your terms then. She walked to the device and picked up one of the bracers. She looked at it critically before sticking a hand through. The bracer locked itself into place, closing around her forearm with a mechanical click. She didn't seem impressed but donned the other bracer as well. There, I have made myself hostage to your whim. You will find that I have no ill will towards you. Harry said, give me a moment while I set up protections from the terrors. I would not like for them to come after my friends. Hella smirked. She had never seen any form of protection work against these creatures. Harry summoned 4 Patroni and turned a portal into being right next to her. 2 of the Patroni walked through and the Dementors that had been floating around were instantly repelled by Harry's spells. How remarkable. Hella said, looking at the Dementors still retreating from the holy glow of the Patroni. You are a sorcerer then? She asked as she stepped through the obviously magical portal. He is more than a mere sorcerer. Loki said, we are not here to argue about what I am. Harry stated, why are we here then? Hela asked. Do you wish to offer me amnesty for me to escape one prison for another? Leave one master who chained his attack dog up for another who has enemies to slay? If you come with me you will never be required to fight again. Harry said, I'm trying to reunite our family, not gain a servant. Please sister, hear us out. Thor said, Odin has changed. He makes time to understand his children now. That doesn't sound like him. Hela scoffed. If not for Odin, what about us? Loki offered. Don't you care for family? My family locked me away in hell. Hela rebuffed, then she focused on Harry. You interest me though, you have a strong connection to my aspect. What are you the god of? I'm not a god. Harry said, I'm just blessed in some ways and cursed in others. He is the god of artifice and enchantment, Thor argued. His most recent creation is a weapon that can cut through dwarven swords and stand against the might of Mjolnir. Impressive, but I can do those things too. She smiled as she stomped her foot and a blade shot out of the ground and impacted the bracer on one of her hands. Her eyes showed shock only for a second when the blade failed to secure her freedom. She shrugged and grabbed up the sword. Before she could move, she fell to the floor unconscious. Natasha became visible behind her and shrugged. What was the next plan again? When Hela came to, she berated herself for letting her guard down. She had felt the invisible person. Of course, but the fact that they were moving closer had led her to believe they were going for a physical hit. The magic that caught her had been summoned in such a way that it felt like it would miss. Apparently someone had taken the time to make it function that way on purpose. She'd not fall for it again. As she got up, it was to see only Harry standing in front of her. Where did your friends go? She asked. Did you send them away so that I don't kill them? I sent them away because if we fight they'd be tempted to kill you. Harry countered. I also thought it would be a nice moment to have a conversation while we have a friendly spar. Tony did say you can do what you want as long as you have the bracers on, and I'm not going to make him a liar. It had actually been said on purpose. It was all part of the plan. So you are going to fight me with your enchanted weapon, the one that can destroy weapons made of Uru? Hela asked. If that's what you want, Harry half-asked. I don't really have a preference. Honestly, I'd rather have a drink at my bar, but I understand that you were raised on violence and wouldn't understand that kind of thing. Hela just smiled at him and picked up her blade. Whenever you're ready, little brother, she said. Harry drew his weapon and stood at the ready. In the stance Sif had taught him, don't be too hard on me, I'm no expert at sword fighting. That sounds like an excuse, Hela exclaimed as she lunged at Harry, ready to skewer him. Harry's sword parried her strike and went on the offensive, trying to impale her shoulder. Hela blocked it easily and returned with an overhead strike. You don't seem too bad at this. Who did you train under? I just started learning actually, Harry said as his sword blocked the strike. His hand was just going along for the ride. He returned with an attempt to hit her hand to disarm her, but she was too quick and dodged his attack, taking a step back to reassess. My friend tells me that if you have a weapon you should know how to use it. He continued. I just wanted to make the damn thing. It was a fun little side project. You made a dwarven blade cutter for enjoyment? Hela asked with an upturned lip as she looked at his stance to figure out any weaknesses. She wouldn't normally take so long. But the boy had skill and she was starting to enjoy the conversation. You truly are an artificer. Are you really such a great enchanter though? She asked as she stamped her foot again, causing 4 swords to shoot out of the ground at him. Harry took a step back as one of the swords came a little close for comfort as his enchanted blade automatically blocked all the incoming blades with a single swipe. I get by, he replied modestly. How are you doing that? Hela asked. I see your reflexes, you aren't that fast. I could be. Harry offered with a bored look as he activated his time dilation and shot forward and past her. I just thought I'd make it a fair fight, he said from behind her as she watched her sword's blade fly from the handle. Hela looked around incredulously at the mere boy who seemed to have shot past her even faster than she could follow. How are you doing these things? She asked. Magic, Harry said with another shrug. Sorry about your sword. I can replace it if it was special to you, but I'm assuming it's not since you conjured it. Hela was no longer smiling. If only she had access to her full power, she'd have this whelp on his knees before her by now. You have me at a disadvantage. She began, you had time to prepare for me, yet I know nothing about you. I'm willing to talk, Harry offered, but you want a fight, right? I also didn't have anything to go on besides that you were called the goddess of death, I mean. He stuck a hand through a small portal and retrieved the other sword he had made with the adamantium blade. It didn't have any enchantments and no vibranium core, but it was well balanced and runed so it should work. He tossed it at Hela. Here, this one should last you longer. It was a prototype. I am the goddess of death, Hela said as she grabbed the sword out of the air and rushed at Harry. No, Harry argued as the sword fight started anew, only faster this time. Harry kept his face calm throughout. You are more like the goddess of war. You have a small affinity for death, but not strong enough to command it. You might be able to do some necromancy, though. He offered as he allowed the sword to go completely defensive and blocking all of Hela's hits. Hela could not stand this. The man was talking as casually as if he were taking a stroll in the park, insulting her divine right while he blocked and parried her every hit. It was strange, though. She saw no movements in preparation of her attacks, yet none of her hits struck home. She decided to try a different tactic. As she lunged at him, she took a hard step forward and channeled some of her remaining power through her feet to conjure a blade from behind him. Harry was becoming tired of this. Hela was really strong. He could feel the hits as their kinetic energy failed to be completely absorbed by the vibranium core. This was her weak. He now understood Odin's worry. Suddenly, Urubane hit him in the shoulder with the flat of the blade and forced him to the side, his hand having to let go to allow the blade to do so. As he fell to the floor, he saw the shocked look from Hela as she was impaled by her own blade, flying through the air where Harry had just stood, right through her stomach. Were you trying to kill me? Harry observed as he got up and dusted himself off. Urubane is enchanted to protect me more aggressively when my opponent becomes more intent on killing me, and it's never done that before. The blade in question just hung in the air between them. You have truly enchanted a weapon to fight for you. Hela asked, that makes so much more sense. Urubane sounded like a decent enough name for a weapon of that caliber. I'll admit that I am impressed, she said reluctantly, but that won't stop me. She suddenly lunged at Harry, the sword in her stomach falling out of her to the ground unblemished, his own sword extended as another shot out of the ground for her to catch, ready to react when the first blade was diverted. Harry saw the other blade shoot out of the ground and decided to go for a bit of a show of force. He channeled his magic to the scabbard he was holding and enlarged the blade in front of himself as fast as he could. Hela's shocked face was comical as it disappeared behind the giant blade and Harry lost sight of her. But the clang of metal on metal and her oomph as the blade shot forward and punted her back was funny, and he couldn't help the smile on his face as he walked up to her prone form. His blade was still giant, but it was hovering over her body, only barely pressing down on her legs to ensure she doesn't channel her power through them again, keeping her from attacking him and escaping. Can we stop for a bit? Harry asked, his smile fading. I think I've proven my point, and I don't like feeling like a bully. You were simply having fun with me, weren't you? Hela asked, refusing to answer his question, but Harry took it as a good sign that she was talking in the past tense, so he shrunk the blade and returned it to his sheath. She lunged at him suddenly and he locked her in place with his magic. It took more power than he'd thought it would, but he just barely made it look effortless. I could have done this from the start, yes, but I also know you might respect a show of what I can do for you, rather than just against you. Harry explained as his friend stepped out of the Fidelius hidden location. It was difficult to set up inside a room of requirement, but Harry had managed. Now you know that I can protect you and that I don't need anyone to do my fighting for me. And if it wasn't clear, Harry released the reins on his power completely and added just a bit from his ring. There's no lack of power on this side. Hela looked in astonishment as this young man, for surely he could not be a boy with such strength, released his power which he had held tightly contained until just then. That's when she felt it. Harry didn't just have a passing connection with death. He was entwined with it in such a way that it made her own connection seem like a child's toy. What are you? She asked despite herself. He is your brother, Loki said, having reached them again. And this is the last offer we make you. Stop fighting us, we are not here for violence. Thor pleaded, it's all I know. Hela shot back, then her features calmed with some effort, though I suppose I can take time to listen. She said begrudgingly, you've earned that much, thank you. Harry said, willing some comfortable couches to appear. In the center rose a coffee table on which he conjured 2 pitchers of water with glasses and made some butter beer. Please help yourself. Can I get you something to eat? I imagine options were limited on Niflheim. Hela waited to see what happened when Harry's friends poured themselves some butterbeer and took sips. When Loki, the first adopted from what she could tell, took a sip with no negative effects, she took the pitcher and drank greedily from it. She could tell the substance turned to water, just as she had observed it do when Loki took a sip, but it was delicious. The most delicious thing she had drunk in a long time. Even better than the supplies that sometimes appeared on the planet for her on occasion. She had her suspicions where they came from but would never thank the old man. This drink, however, contained power and she could feel it slowly recharging her meager supply. When she finished downing the entire pitcher, she looked back at the others there and noted that Thor had grabbed the other pitcher and was just finishing the last of it, having apparently tried to challenge her. He'd never beat her in a contest of drinking. She had learned to drink with the Valkyries. Harry just shook his head and replaced the pitchers before pouring himself a glass and drinking deeply. "You've got a strong arm," he said to Hela. "My arm was getting tired and I didn't even feel your full force. No wonder I was warned against contacting you. If I had anything but that blade, I would have certainly died at the first attack." Hela watched as a redhead she had not seen before but now realized was the hidden attacker that had downed her earlier approached and sat next to Harry on a double couch, closer than would be proper for simply friends or comrades. "Is she your paramour?" Hela asked. "She is," Harry agreed. "Sorry for not introducing you earlier. This is Natasha Romanoff, the Black Widow." He indicated the redhead next to him. "That is Tony Stark, the Iron Man," he said, pointing at the man who had worn full armor earlier but had since removed his helm. "That's Bruce Banner, the Hulk. Don't think him weak for his small frame. He's by far the most dangerous of them if you allow him to get close to you," Loki warned. "That's Steve Rogers, Captain America," Harry continued, with a smile and a shake of his head as he pointed at the man dressed in a strange uniform of blue, red and white who nodded at her politely. "That's Sam Wilson, the Falcon," he said, pointing at a man in a silver and red suit with a device on his back. For flight she presumed going by his name. "That's Bucky Barnes," he said, pointing at a man with long hair and a metal arm. "That's Logan, the Wolverine," he said, pointing at a man who had not made a move besides taking a position close by. He seemed ready for a fight at any moment. She got a sense of wildness from him that attracted her need for violence. "I am Thor, god of thunder, wielder of Mjolnir, first, second child of Odin," Thor introduced himself, having to correct himself. "I am Loki, god of mischief and trickery." Loki smiled a roguish smile at her as he refilled his drink. "First adopted son of Odin and Frigga." Then he pointed at Harry. "He is our youngest sibling. I intend to convince him to take the potion to become part of our family properly, once his intended has borne him some children to continue his heritage." "And what is that heritage?" Hela asked, intrigued. Never had she felt such power, never had she sensed such a strong connection to death. "I was brought here through necessity and the machinations of a higher existence," Harry said. "I hail from another reality, not dimension or realm either." The man in the armor interjected after sitting himself down and looking completely calm as he drank his beverage. Hela suspected she knew which higher existence he was referring to as she felt a tug at her own connection at the mere mention of it. Harry conjured a large stack of mini cheeseburgers on the table for everyone to snack on. They all knew it was temporary. Hela watched as the man in the armor as well as half of those gathered there reached for the food. "It's just a snack," Harry explained. "They are not real, I can tell." Hela answered. "Why not make it like you made the water?" "It has to do with how my magic works," Harry explained. "I can summon you some real food if you want. I've had something prepared just in case." "So you are a sorcerer?" Hela asked. "I'm a wizard," Harry corrected. "Sorcerers from Earth Midgard work with mystical energies summoned from other dimensions. I use magic, not mystic forces. The difference being that you can access a large store of personal power, where sorcerers channel only that which is available through their own capacity." Hela nodded in understanding. "I have seen such as what you describe. Are you saying you're more powerful than a sorcerer?" "Different," Harry corrected again. "Bullshit," Tony interjected, trying to make it sound like a cough and failing horribly. "Good luck trying to get him to admit he's stronger than anyone," Loki said with a roll of his eyes. "It brings me no shame to admit that he could probably best even me," Thor said with a proud smile. "Probably." Tony scoffed. He had no doubt Harry would win. And Hulk wouldn't want to fight Harry seriously, though he believes he'd win if he had to. Bruce said, taking a bite of one of the mini burgers. Harry just shook his head and summoned a burger from the diminishing pile to snack on, sending one to Hela, who'd finally sat down in a comfortable armchair. He'd rather not have this conversation again. He'd already refused to try and wield Mjolnir, since he could feel he was quite capable and didn't want to embarrass Thor after he had claimed that he who wields Mjolnir can rule Asgard. Hela took the burger that Harry floated out to her and tried it as well. It was delicious. These Midgardians were quite inventive. She could taste so many different flavors and textures with just one bite. Her grudging respect for her youngest sibling grew. For the skill and ease with which he created such a complicated conjuring. She was skilled at the same art as well, but used it mostly to create weapons. She could tell there was something different in their power, as when she ate this food she could feel her power rising slowly. It was made of pure energy. She'd not need sustenance as long as she could fill her energy this way. Don't look so surprised, Loki said to her with a knowing look. He's quite aware that he's giving you power, but can afford to offer you this much. If you end up signing the contract and going with him, you'd probably reside on his living island kingdom of magic, where his power has suffused even the magical creatures that live in harmony there. And you ain't getting close to my critters until you sign another one to specifically protect them. Logan said from where he still stood watching. You're the boss, Logan, Harry said with a smile. But do you mind if I don't make it a blood oath binding? Hela might need to protect herself after all. I'm not leaving her helpless. What is this contract and blood oath you speak of? Hela asked. It is a magical binding that binds you to the agreed upon terms. Loki said, my own contract was made in such a way as to assure me of my freedom so long as I never betray my family or people. Our brother is quite considerate that way. I won't require anything from you, Harry said. All I want is to ensure the safety of my friends, family, and people. If you can agree to that, we can definitely arrange something for you. Will I be allowed to lead your armies against your enemies? Hela asked. She wasn't stupid. This could only be a trap of some sort. He obviously wanted something from her. I'm afraid not. Harry apologized, completely shattering her last thought. I already have a command structure in place for my people. I think Steve would be the best person to ask if we even have only one general, said looking over at Steve, who had stuffed a whole burger in his mouth. He looked surprised, but quickly chewed and swallowed before replying. I think Fury is at the top, at least for the ground forces, but the decisions are run by your field commanders. There's a couple of divisions, with the Flying Forts, Medical Extraction, Ghost Squads, Normal Troops, Special Ops, and those from the Magic Corps who have higher level access to magical equipment. So no, Harry said. I don't have one generals. I have many people who specialize in their own divisions, and they aren't technically my people. They just work for my company. He's always like that, Natasha said fondly. He's technically at the head of a company that protects the lives of billions of people. If you think you can offer something, you'd always be welcome to speak to the right people, but we're not here to recruit you. Harry continued. Let me demonstrate the contract. Harry did just that, allowing Hela to inspect the magic on the contracts. She wasn't an enchanter, but she was able to confirm what it does loosely. Harry signed his demo contract and showed her the consequences of breaking them, and then he destroyed the contract to show her how the effect ended. Then he explained to her what her contract would do. So my contract would do the same, but with my own power enforcing my compliance, Hela asked. So far he seemed to be doing this completely altruistically, but why? She had never known someone to do something like this unless he was sincere about his claims about family. She was too experienced to believe such a thing. Maybe he was just young and thus naive enough. That's right, and you'd also receive the same protections as we get. Harry confirmed. It's the only way I know of to ensure that everyone stays safe and happy. Hela looked at her contract again. It was much the same as Loki's, stating that she was not allowed to overthrow or attack any realm unless it was against tyrannical rule, and that she would be given all the freedoms she could ask for as long as it didn't affect anyone else's negatively. She considered it for a while, but the thing that finally sold it for her was the part that stated that Harry would need to deliver her back to Niflheim at any time she wanted, should she so desire, and to then release her from the contract. Even if she was drained of any power she gained because of the deal, she could at least have a small reprieve from her banishment. In the end she signed, but only after Harry revealed that they were in a room of requirement, demonstrating its capabilities by setting her up with a dragon to fight like he had done for Thor and Sif all those years ago, really impressed her. Showing her that the room was in its own contained dimension through a shrinkable door, which was part of her signing bonus, blew her away. And you are certain you are not breaking any laws by offering me this? Hela asked, hanging the shrunken door, which now looked like a stylized amulet around her neck from the chain provided for it. Are you worried for our brother? Loki asked with a smirk. Even I must admit he is a skilled and powerful ally to have. Hela scoffed. I would not risk such a valuable commodity if he could still be useful in the future. He has contrived of this plan in such a way as to assure that he never broke any laws. Thor said with a smile and shake of his head. Had he broken the law, he'd have put me in a difficult position. How so? Hela asked. Odin refused to pass judgment on Harry and told me it would be my first task as king should he break the law. Thor confided. How long has he known Harry, for him to be so incapable of doing to him what he did to me so easily? Hela demanded, a look of anger passing her face. He met me only a couple of years ago. Harry confided, knowing it wouldn't help. I honestly didn't know about this. It is not Harry's fault. Thor said, Odin has changed. Harry had a hand in it, but I suspect it was mostly my fault. Shortly before Harry came to our world, I was brash and vied for war. Odin had to punish me by turning me mortal. I almost died, and the shock of the series of events in those days tired Odin. He was forced into the Odin sleep early, and when he awoke, it was to me falling from the Bifrost after trying to destroy Jotunheim with it. Loki interjected, much of what happened in those days was my fault. I think I am to blame for that situation more than you, brother. He said to Thor, it doesn't matter whose fault it was. Thor said, placing a hand on Harry's shoulder. It was because of Harry's intervention that Frigga lives, and I suspect we can thank him that Odin is even still with us now. The Odin's brew certainly helped. Natasha said, it works like an antidepressant and Odin is drinking it daily these days as I understand it. Then she turned to Hela, and don't think that Odin didn't struggle with the choice. I'm an expert at reading people. I could see the pain in his face when he spoke of you. Then there's also the people you killed before you were banished. Harry's personality demands that he do what he believes is right. You could hardly compare your situation with his. Are you certain it wasn't just disappointment you saw on his face? Hela asked scathingly. Where had this person been when she needed someone to stand up for her? Then she realized he was here now, a scant few years after meeting Odin, weeks after learning of her. He had yet to lie to her. She could tell she'd give him the benefit of the doubt at least. Her older siblings had thousands of years to help her. Harry, though, seemed to be someone she could trust to do what he believed was right, even if he may not be completely sane to try and help her. She didn't even believe that she was capable of being redeemed. She didn't know that she wanted to be. To break the tedium of hell, though, was something she'd give much for. When they were ready to leave, the rest of the Avengers revealed themselves along with the ghost squads and magical support Fury had sent along. Harry turned a portal for them and they all left for EPIHQ. Only Logan, Thor, Loki, Natasha, and Harry stayed behind. Tony said he'd see them later, though. He planned on staying on standby and having Friday monitor through the systems on the island should their presence be required. He didn't trust this woman yet. Something about her was off. He'd known enough crazies to pick up on it from her. Harry opened the final portal and indicated for everyone to precede him. Hela stepped through the latest portal. Intellectually, she had known that they were traveling vast distances, but she had stepped from one dead planet to another. Suddenly seeing all the life and feeling all the power in the air left her slightly breathless. It had been a long time since she had seen trees or heard laughter or seen any colors besides the prevailing gray that was in so much abundance on the dead planets she had just left. There was a pool of crystal clear water with light elves and nature spirits playing and singing along to music she heard coming from the colorful area in its center, where another elf was smiling as he handed what looked like an alcoholic beverage to one of the nature spirits. There was so much magic in everything around her that she felt for a second that she was on Asgard. It was also welcoming and open, free and peaceful, without pomp or grand displays of power or towers covered in gold. This was an island with a singular purpose, rest and relaxation. She could feel something else as well as she observed the pulse of life running through the very sand beneath her feet. In that second she felt an awareness that somehow smiled at her and welcomed her. She got a flash of an image of a grazing deer, surrounded by other creatures all looking at her as if asking her to join them. In that moment she felt the connections on the island, all of which connected to the wild man Logan. A stronger connection becoming almost visible when Harry stepped through the portal. She sensed a flow of power from into Harry. He truly was the one to supply all the power of this island. It wasn't something she hadn't seen before, but strangely none of the power on the island had the taint of death she had thought she'd sense, especially with how intrinsically Harry was connected to the aspect. Instead, it was as if Harry had specifically made this island to be the opposite of death, a respite from the aspect which meant the end of all things and would one day claim them all. As if hearing her thoughts, Harry spoke up, I am happy to welcome you to the island of New Atlantis. It is home to many who deserve a chance at life. Thank you for giving me the same chance. Hela said, almost despite herself. As she stood there basking in the warm sun, she felt the welcome of the island again, like it was waiting for Harry to greet her. Suddenly the power in the air started flowing into her, Harry's welcome being enough to allow her access. The power of the island was not as plentiful as it would be on Asgard, but it was teeming with life. Harry's magic was different from that of Asgard, where the wills of those who inhabit it focus on strength. Here it seems all the power is focused on life. Her outfit's accents, which had long since turned the gray of the dead world she lived on, suddenly gained a vibrant green color as her power slowly filled her stores with its potential. You never told me you'd be offering me the energy of the island. Hela said, looking at Harry. Don't look at me. Harry said, it's Prong's doing. Logan spoke up as the island communicated with him in the way it had come to. Harry's the power, I'm the caretaker, and Prong's is the spirit. He's young still and always shares what he feels people needs. He looked her dead in the eye as he approached her. If you betray this island, you won't have to worry about Harry or your contract. He then lowered his voice so only she could hear. If you betray this island, I'll force feed you water from its pool of eternity and then have Harry send you back. You'll never find this island again. Hela had actually paled at this. She knew the cost that would have on her soul. Then she smiled. This man was a worthy sort, it seemed. She hadn't ever been threatened thusly or so thoroughly. Harry had chosen wisely to give him responsibility here. I'll have to endeavor not to betray the island then. She responded. Make sure you don't. Logan said. Suddenly there was a gust of wind and she looked up as a large dragon made a slow landing next to Logan, who patted her with a smile on his face. Hey there, puppy. Mind giving me a lift to the manticore's lair? It's almost feeding time. Hela had never seen this kind of relationship. The dragon deferred to Logan as an equal, but with what she could only describe as some form of reverence. The dragon lifted a claw and allowed Logan to step on it to mount her back before she took off, and Hela spotted a wing of smaller dragons join her on her way towards a plateau she could see in the center of the island. What a man, she muttered to herself. Harry decided not to respond to that. He knew Logan was already in the start of a relationship with May Parker, but would rather not step on any toes. He'd leave that situation for Logan to handle. It didn't stop him from smiling, though. Come, let's have Eldrin pour us a drink and then I'll take you for a tour of your accommodations. I thought the room was to be my residence, Hela asked, touching the amulet. If you want, I suppose, Harry shrugged. But it would cut you off from the power of the island, and you can't absorb power in the room, as it returns to the room when you exit. I see, Hela nodded in understanding. It made sense, otherwise the enchantments would lose their power and cease to function. Eldrin had already started pouring drinks on their approach. He'd apparently already made a batch of Bahama Mamas for Harry, because the moment he set foot near the bar, the drink was waiting. Harry had long since stopped trying to figure out how he was so fast with it, never realizing Eldrin had made a couple of pitchers which he kept in stasis for when they were needed. Since the ice didn't melt and the alcohol didn't evaporate in stasis, it was always fresh and ready for him. The elves had slowly been rediscovering their own magics as they became more prominent. Light spells and small acts of telekinetic ability became more commonplace. Eldrin was showing a slight affinity for divination, which would explain his near-perfect record of always knowing what to serve his clients, making up drinks as he went, always knowing just what to add to make something special. Little Zamantha was also showing signs of a strong magical ability. Zira suspected it had to do with her youth and growing up with so much ambient magic available. Harry thought it made sense. Fleur was a similar creature raised in a magical household and was a strong witch, so if Zamantha was the same, they'd have to consider getting her a wand soon. Luckily, she'd have Big Sis wanted to help her learn to use her magic and make her a wand. As it was, New Atlantis became just a little bit more magical as the days passed. Hela's favorite drink was unsurprisingly fire whiskey. She settled in rather quickly, but she seldom socialized with the other inhabitants. She was often seen sitting on her favorite dune, just watching the ocean with a far-off look as she sipped at a drink. She'd not seen as much water in a long time and found watching the ocean meditative. The inhabitants showed her the same respect any of Harry's family was shown, something that met with Hela's approval, even when she realized they were doing it despite Harry's orders for them to try and be more familiar. She soon discovered that it wasn't an intentional disobedience as much as it was an inability to show less respect for the man that had rescued all of them from lives served in slavery. Hela was never a vindictive person. She'd not make people suffer as much as kill them outright. She found herself respecting his ideals, if not his methodology. She'd have wiped the wrongdoers off the face of Vanaheim, especially when the small one, Zamantha, started referring to her as Aunt Hela and refused to let her be alone for any extended period of time. Despite herself, she started caring for the happy little sprite as she started referring to her. By the time Hela had settled, Harry was already on mission again. It seemed a certain Ulysses Claw was planning a bit of a foray into Wakanda, and one of EPI's operatives had caught wind of it. Claw was taking a guest, a certain Eric Stevens aka Killmonger. The situation with Claw and Killmonger was a difficult one to handle. They didn't have any specifics, until Fury had their people interrogate both of them under Veritaserum. It wasn't hard to find them considering their resources. They decided to hang on to them considering all of their crimes and put them both in stasis so that the proper people could be contacted. That's when the big question was asked, So who do we send? Fury was not in the business of getting involved with the internal affairs of sovereign nations, unless they were a threat to world peace. From Killmonger's own testimony, he wanted to start a global race war. That would definitely be a threat EPI could not allow. I'd say send Coulson, Harry said easily. He's good with people, why not Natasha? Tony suggested. He had invited himself as he often did. Fury was not even asking him to leave anymore. Since Tony was under contract, the secrets were kept and Fury didn't need to go threatening. The fact that it had been proven that they both worked well as a unit wasn't mentioned. Too well known. They might suspect other reasons. Fury replied, Coulson's team is really busy though, something about an indestructible ancient evil book of unknown origin that turns anyone that reads it evil, but only after giving them exactly what they wanted. Like a monkey paw wish, Tony asked. A what? Harry asked. It's a story about a magic, wish-granting talisman which grants any wish but in the worst ways possible. Fury said, and yes, like that. What do you mean worst ways? Harry asked. Imagine you wished for world peace, Tony said. Your wish would be granted but by killing everyone on the planet. No people, no war, or making them all too stupid to know how weapons work or turning them into animals or any number of things. Fury agreed. Wow, never heard of that one, but now the saying be careful what you wish for makes a whole lot more sense to me. Harry said with a nod of understanding. He turned to Fury. Will they need my help with that? Once they've secured the Darkhold, we'll use standard protocols to lock it away. We'll be needing access to the vault, so you should only need to come and open the door for us. Fury said with a shake of his head. Coulson's team knew what they were doing. With Ward as their specialist and trained with most of the magical equipment available to the team, he was by far one of their best operatives. He had qualified for the Ghost program, but had refused the invitation. He chose to stay with the team to continue making up for his past behavior to them from when he was with Hydra. The fact that Skye turned out to be an enhanced with seismic powers was just another boon to the team. Tony had even helped design a set of gloves for her, reinforced with vibranium to help protect herself from her power. The vault was originally a drop safe that led to a pocket dimension, which Harry had the only access to. But when the amount of items they were putting away started increasing exponentially, Harry needed to expand the vault so that they could access it with larger equipment. The vault was in an undisclosed location behind two separate Fidelius charms, only the first of which Fury and the upper levels of EPI knew about. There was a fail-safe, which could be used to bypass the second one, but that was kept in a secure lockbox which could only be accessed by a minimum of 4 EPI senior staff and or directors. Said lockbox had very strong security and magical protections as well. Fury had insisted on Fury-level redundancy and security for some of the stuff they had found, like an Asgardian staff that made anyone that wielded it a berserker with supernatural strength, or alien technology which Earth wasn't allowed to have yet. So who then? Harry asked. He really didn't want to explain that they already knew about Wakanda's technology, but wanted to have them serve justice to the men they had in custody. It could only further their plans to ingratiate themselves with the Wakandan royal family. Why not handle it yourself, Harry? Tony asked. This is the kind of thing you love. You tell them you know some of their secrets and show them just enough of yours so that they sign a contract that protects you both and then you take them to meet the nymphs. Just like that? Harry asked with an upturned eyebrow. Yes. Tony said with a shrug. Maybe show them the rhino things. You mean the erumpents? Harry asked. Yeah, the exploding rhinos. Tony nodded. That might actually be something they'd be interested in. Fury thought aloud. Why me though? Harry asked. He knew what they were after and he was still worried over their reaction to him knowing about their tech. Harry wanted to get back to his research. He almost had the process he was working on down. He had been trying to create a single enchantment that would capture a spell and store it in such a way that it could be released at will. He had created a separate enchantment to imbue other items with effects like the rubber bullets that carried a single stunning spell, but that was specifically designed for that purpose. An entire enchantment for just one single-use spell. He wanted to make an enchantment that could do it all. But he was struggling to bridge the gap between different kinds of magic. In the end, he resolved to come back to the project, as he wanted to start production on a specific range of spell-stored enchantments, specifically the Sobering Charm, the Enervate, and the Calming Charm. All of these had a physiological and psychological effect. He was able to create one enchantment to capture all of those because they were similar kinds of magic. What he ended up doing was producing a clear, see-through button, which had a letter in it to represent the spell stored within. S for Sobering, E for Enervate, and C for Calming. That was a simple conjuration which took negligible amounts of power, since Harry intended to add runes to the finished product to preserve its longevity, having the items vanish as the spell is consumed. Natasha suggested he make them function like pills so that they activated when introduced to water and heated up. Harry liked the idea, but changed it so that it didn't need to be ingested for them to activate. They still could be, but it was unnecessary. He suspected that doctors might want to use these to wake and slash or calm their patients without needing to force them to drink pills, so he ended up having to add a sliver of intent recognition. Now they could be placed on the skin and willed to activate, so that the magic went where the person handling them wanted. The magic pills were strangely difficult to produce, due to the requirement to add so many functions. But Harry had a plan to handle that as well. Once they had time, he'd be starting production of a new range of conjuration and enchantment factories. He'd have to get Tony's input as well, as he was certain that knowledge of how a production line worked would be helpful. That's also the stage he was currently at. If he finished that, he'd be able to get back to his original enchantment research. Because it's your island, Tony said simply. Harry wanted to complain but had to admit that it would be the easiest way to bring them into the fold. T'Challa was an honorable sort though. He'd probably allow the challenge when he found out that Killmonger had a legitimate claim to challenge for the throne. Okay, fine, Harry relented. It was accepted that this was part of his responsibilities, always had been. But after that, you're helping me with my enchantment production line. I don't have a problem with that. Tony said, what are you working on? Fury asked, trying to sound casual. Harry's working on something that'll give PI a license to print money. Tony said if it works he'll be able to sell spell effects in the form of pills. Like the stun bullet factory, Fury asked. Exactly, Tony exclaimed. Really, Tony? Harry asked exasperatedly. You couldn't let me reveal this on my own when I was ready. You don't mind, Tony scoffed. It's not like I told him what you'll be working on next. Now that will be. Tony continued talking, but no sound was coming from his mouth. When he realized, he pouted like a kid. Harry ignored him. What I'm working on next will be a surprise, and if I find out Tony told you, I'm memory wiping both of you. Harry threatened. Tony tapped Harry's shoulder and pointed at his throat. Sorry, Tony, I set a delay on that one. You'll have to wait the hour out. Tony looked affronted. Fury smiled. Are you sure he can go that long without hearing the sound of his own voice? I'm not. Harry scoffed, smirking at Tony. Anyway, I'll let you work out introductions. Let me know what your people come up with. Our people, Fury corrected automatically. They'd had that argument many times by now. I'm sure someone is already working on it, and that was that. Harry went back to continue working on his production line, having bought himself some time. It turns out he didn't buy enough time. The next day found Harry in a boardroom in Johannesburg, seated across the table from both the current and future king of Wakanda. Good morning, King T'Chaka, Prince T'Challa. Harry said. I'm sorry for calling this meeting so out of the blue and with so little in the way of details. Good morning, Mr. Potter, King T'Chaka said as he nodded at Harry. When the CEO and founder of both PI and EPI calls for an urgent meeting, it would be foolish to ignore the request, he said with a smile. Your people said you had some information on a man that we've been looking for some time. Prince T'Challa said, we assumed you called the meeting for that or maybe to discuss how and why the mercenary Wade Wilson keeps on turning up and killing warlords in Africa only to disappear and be seen minutes later back in America. He's still doing that? Harry asked in shock. I'm sorry. I'll admit to having sent him there a couple of years back to send a message about the distribution centers being off limits. I gave him only a temporary means of traveling there and back. He shouldn't be able to use that method anymore. He has caused some interruptions for us, T'Challa admitted, and you still haven't explained how. I haven't, Harry agreed. He spotted a look of annoyance from one of the female bodyguards who was standing in the corner. His own bodyguard, supplied by Fury, stood on the opposite side of the room. There was also a whole squad of people in the hall outside and in a building across the road, monitoring for anything suspicious. Are you going to? T'Challa asked. I will, but first let me show you something cool, Harry said. He put his hand into his pocket and deliberately slowly removed his hand with his pensive tablet in it. The bodyguard had stiffened, but relaxed when it looked like he wasn't pulling a weapon. This is a device made by my company. It allows me to extract a memory from a willing person and view it. Harry put a finger to his head and withdrew a memory. The strand of memory was clearly visible to all in the room. How are you doing that? King T'Chaka asked as Harry placed the memory in the tablet. The second memory will explain, Harry said. The reason I'm showing you this is to keep the knowledge from anyone that isn't authorized to know it. You might want to have someone test the device for you. How does it work? Said the bodyguard as she walked up to the table without having needed to be called. Simply place your finger on the surface and you will enter the memory. Harry said. It will feel like you are falling while you enter the memory, but your body will stand still while you relive the last 5 minutes, which is what memory I used for the demonstration. The demonstration was quickly out of the way, and soon Harry had extracted a second memory. The bodyguard stood by closely to ensure that nothing happened to them as they viewed the memory. Harry took out the contracts he had for them, and signed where he was supposed to while they viewed a memory of a demonstration of the contracts. There was a small introduction to magic and they saw a portal being turned. The last thing they saw was Harry stepping through the portal into his office on the lunar base. When they came out of the memory, Harry pushed the contracts across the table to them. All in all, Fury's people had come up with a brilliant way to expedite the process. All the necessary subjects were covered and he didn't need to bother with painful demonstrations anymore. The king insisted that the bodyguards also sign the contracts so that Harry could open a portal for them. That done, Harry opened a portal directly to the medical wing of EPI. His bodyguard stayed behind. He'd inform the rest to return to base using their port keys. "Where are we?" the king's bodyguard demanded. "I was thinking we could start our tour by first fixing King T'Chaka's eye," Harry said, indicating King T'Chaka's glass eye. "We have a very good prosthetics division." May Parker, still on duty, didn't need to be told. Harry loved doing this kind of thing. "King T'Chaka, it is an honor to meet you. My name is May Parker. I'll be taking care of this for you," she said as she indicated for him and his personal guard to follow him. Normally, there'd be no chance that they'd allow someone they didn't know to do anything with their monarch, but he had indicated for them to allow what was going on. The idea of magic still very much at the forefront of his mind. T'Challa decided to stay with Harry, who had sat down in the waiting area. "What are they doing?" Harry smiled when he saw one of the people leaving from the prosthetics division having gone for a checkup. "Corporal Kowalski, how are you doing, my friend?" he asked, jumping up and making his way over to the man. To Harry's annoyance, the soldier stopped dead, eyes front, and saluted Harry. "I'm doing fine, sir. Thanks for asking, sir." "Why would you do that?" Harry asked with mock sadness. "I thought we were friends." John Kowalski finally relaxed and smiled at his ultimate boss. "Can't take the army out of the soldier, see, Harry." Harry nodded in acknowledgement of him, addressing him more familiarly. Then he indicated the prince, who was still standing nearby just watching the exchange. "This is Prince T'Challa of the Wakandan people. His father, the king, is currently being fitted for a replacement eye. Do you mind showing the prince what we were able to do for you?" "No problem, Harry." John turned to the prince and bowed slightly. "Your Highness, my name is Sergeant John Kowalski of the 2nd Infantry Unit for EPI. "Sergeant," Harry interrupted. John smiled. "Something about a commendation from a superior?" Harry just smiled, glad that had worked out. "Good morning, Sergeant," T'Challa said politely. "Congratulations on the promotion. It was a while back, but it's still nice to hear," John said with a genuine smile. "If it hadn't been for Harry, I'd probably still be out on the streets begging for scraps." "Why do you say that?" T'Challa asked. The man seemed put together well enough. John smiled and bent down, pulling up the pants around his boots and showing the obviously artificial limb. Then he moved his foot as no prosthetic ever would be capable of. Then he rolled up the other leg, then one of his arms. T'Challa was speechless. He didn't think anyone had advanced enough to do this, not like they could anyway. "I tried to get them to replace the other arm as well, but apparently it wasn't necessary." John made the standard joke. "The prosthetics don't tire, so the men with them tend to outshine the men who joined whole and hale," Harry said. "Once they've acclimated to them," John said. "At first it's strange to feel something respond where you can't feel anything, but you get used to it." "Hey, I'm still working on alternatives to the expensive wiring framework we need to use to create sensory input for you. Once that's done, you'll be able to feel again, okay? Patience is a virtue," Harry said indignantly. "Ungrateful soldiers," he muttered under his breath. John just smiled. "I know, Harry, and honestly I'm fine with what I have. Save the better stuff for the new recruits, like you'll have a say in it," May said from behind them as she walked up behind them with the king in tow, looking around in wonder. "I'll have all my patients receive only the best we can offer." "Baba," T'Challa asked in shock, seeing the glass eye move around as he looked at everything around them. "My son," King T'Chaka said, walking up to his son and hugging him. "They were able to give me my eye back. I can see Baba," T'Challa said with a smile on his face. He turned to May and bowed to her. "Thank you, doctor, for helping my father." "I'm just a nurse," May said. "The prosthetics division runs like a well-oiled machine and Harry himself made the eye." T'Challa was about to bow to Harry too, but Harry was already heading for a corner, where he was turning a portal, John walking alongside him, Harry having asked him to help with a demonstration. Everyone stepped through, and he waved at May in thanks for her help. The next room they were in had a person at a desk behind a computer screen. "Good morning, Mr. Potter," the friendly man said. "Are you here for the prisoners?" "We are," Harry confirmed. "Also, John here has agreed to be a demonstration for the king and prince." "All right," the man said. "Just one moment while I set this up." He typed away at the keyboard and a wall lit up next to him showing the reception area for prisoner drop location. "You may proceed," he said. John, knowing what was coming, lay down on the floor and Harry summoned a disc which he placed on the man's chest. "See you now, John," Harry tapped the disc and it activated the stasis field, and the portkey took John away to the area shown on the screen. Harry turned to the guests. You'll note that John seems to have stopped breathing. In fact, he's still alive and well, but just suspended in time. This is useful in a number of ways. No escape attempts. No need to worry about immediate medical assistance, and the person doesn't have to wait. The next thing John will see is us when we wake him up. Harry nodded at the man behind the desk. Right away, sir, the man said as he tapped away, and an arm descended to him and picked him up. A minute later, another wall opened and John's prone form was deposited on a raised platform which rose from the floor. Harry walked to John and took the disc from his chest. John's eyes blinked and then he got up. It's always strange to realize that the demonstration is over just as soon as it began. He said. The man behind the desk was typing away and soon the two prisoners were displayed on the screen. Please confirm that these are the prisoners you are looking for. Harry nodded at the man who started typing away again. This is the part that I hate. Harry said. What part is that? T'Challa asked. The man answered by putting a stack of paperwork on the counter in front of his desk. Please fill these out, sir. It took 2 hours to go over the paperwork, since there was a report about what the prisoners had said under Veritaserum, legal documents, waivers, everything. By the end, when everything was signed, Harry asked, So what are you going to do? T'Challa thought about it but then shook his head. I don't know. This man has a right to challenge but no honor. He'd betray everything Wakanda has stood for so long. Then it is good the decision is not yours, my son, T'Chaka said. I have made my decision to start sending our support out into the world. Our weapons, however, stay in our hands. I understand, Baba, T'Challa said, nodding, relief showing in his face. If I could make a suggestion, Harry offered. Please, T'Chaka said with a smile. Why not just join the effort we're currently already providing to the world? Harry asked. We would give you access to certain of our technology, providing your people don't mind going through the training, and then we join forces to protect the world. King T'Chaka was dumbstruck for a moment before a smile grew back on his face. You would offer this freely? Of course. Harry shrugged. The Earth Protection Initiative is not a closed organization. We recruit globally and our mission has always been to protect and preserve life. There is a possibility that we'll be branching out and start offering support to the Nova Corps in return for some of their more advanced technology. But that just means we'll need more hands. Perhaps we can hand some of our current tasks over to Wakanda if you're willing. What is the Nova Corps? T'Challa couldn't help asking. Oh right, Harry said, knocking himself softly upside the head. They're an intergalactic peacekeeping organization based from their home world of Xandar. They have many different races and species working together for the common good, and I've been hoping one of our divisions could start adding to that number. You're acquainted with aliens? T'Chaka asked skeptically. To be fair, there's a whole story connected to that one. Harry said he'd have to send one of their people to fill the Wakandans in on some of what EPI has been up to. But just to remind you, none of this can be shared with anyone outside of the contract. We'll provide you with one that you can have people you trust sign, but it's connected to another one so you can't destroy that one to free people from the magic. And the hiding magics? T'Chaka asked. In your memory, you said it could be used to protect large areas. Your whole island cannot be found by either magic or technology, correct? At Harry's nod, he continued, What would it take for you to hide our capital like that? Harry winced. To be honest, I don't know that I can hide your entire city. It would take a phenomenal amount of power, as I'd need to remove the memory from everyone that currently knows where Wakanda is, including those that stay within its bounds. I can call upon a great amount of power, but I don't think even I can pull that one off. He thought about it for a minute while the king and prince exchanged disappointed looks. Then he had an idea. I might be able to hide the entrances to your sacred mountain though. Keep visitors or unauthorized personnel from finding it. T'Chaka smiled and nodded. That would be a great service to Wakanda. We would, of course, not expect this service for free, T'Challa said. I think we've seen enough to agree that we can start working together, if only in Africa to begin with. And just like that, EPI gained a new ally. It took a bit of work, but soon there was a portal connecting a hidden location in Wakanda to the reception area at EPI. They started sending people through for training and were beginning to take over the protection of the African distribution centers, with the blessing of Fury, who loved being able to reallocate some of his resources when Harry presented them with the new alliance. The Wakandan princess, Shuri, was one of the first people to be added to the contract, and she was often seen visiting the scientists and researchers from runes and potions all the way through particle physics and alien technology. Even Tony was impressed with her intellect. Speaking of which, Tony was also the one who insisted on Harry taking the royal family on a tour of the island to show them the sights. "What is that?" one of the guards who was accompanying them on the carpet asked, pointing at a creature that looked like a rhino. "Oh, that's a pair of erumpent," Harry said. "I'm sorry for not warning you. I realized they look like rhinos." "Erumpent?" T'Challa asked. "They are a lot like a rhino except bigger and more dangerous." Harry said, "You see how the male's horn is glowing right now?" T'Challa nodded. "Watch. It's mating season for them and he's showing the female his worth." As they slowed down to watch, the erumpent stuck its horn into a tree. A couple of seconds later, it bubbled and contorted until it exploded in a loud and violent way. The male had taken the explosion full in the face, showing the female that it could withstand the hit. Apparently it worked, since the female approached the male and rubbed against him. Harry started the carpet on before the mating ritual completed, which, to his memory, involved a couple more explosions. "What just happened?" the king asked from behind Harry. "Erumpent horns are potent magically and are used by the creature for self-defense and as part of their mating ritual. Its function is, as you saw, to create explosions." Harry explained. "The male attracts the female by surviving an explosion. When many males are around, they usually end up killing themselves trying to impress the female with bigger explosions. That pair are still quite young, not old enough to bear offspring yet. But those creatures were twice as large as a normal rhino." T'Challa exclaimed in disbelief. "I know," Harry said with a solemn nod. "They were the runts of their litter too." "Those were the small ones," one of the guards asked, astounded. "Yes, but Logan has been taking really good care of them." Harry said. "They are starting to fill out." "Logan?" Queen Ramonda asked. "He's the master of these lands. He cares for the creatures and makes sure the ones in the enclosures are fed and happy," Harry explained. "Enclosures? You keep some of these creatures in cages?" T'Challa asked with narrowed eyes. "Relax, will you?" Harry asked. "Why do you automatically assume I'm hurting these creatures? Is it because I'm white?" He'd always wanted to ask that question. He did not expect the many nods. "Really, I was joking." "So were we," T'Chaka said with a bit of a belly laugh. Harry looked behind him and saw Shuri also trying to hide a smile. The guards did not look like they were joking, but they were looking at the next animal already. "Those are some of the unicorns of the island," Harry said offhandedly as a small group of unicorns grazed nearby. "Is that one of your people?" T'Chaka asked, pointing off to where a nymph was looking critically at a field of grass she had just grown. "Yes, that's one of the wood nymphs of New Atlantis. They are in charge of all the plant life. They can make them grow and flourish. As is their nature, she's likely the reason the unicorns are nearby. They tend to follow the nymphs around. They don't like them to be left unaccompanied for some reason," Harry said with a shrug. They continued and Harry soon stopped them at the enclosures. "Here we have our large cat enclosures. Logan has informed me that the Wampus cat might one day be able to live on the land without trying to eat the other creatures, but the manticores, the chimera, and most of all, the Nundu will never be able to live in peace with other animals. They are all apex predators," Harry said, pointing out the enclosures. "Did you bring us here for a specific reason?" T'Chaka asked with a calculating look in his eye. "No reason," Harry lied. "The Nundu from my world was native to Africa and it will be the big attraction today if you can see them. I think that's why I brought you here. I suggest we start the tour with the Wampus cat though." Harry pointed at the first enclosure, explaining how they needed to read the sign so that they'd be able to exit. The Wampus cat was a six-legged cat, resembling a cougar. That's where the resemblance ended though, as this cat was capable of acts of legilimency along with being really fast, strong and nearly impossible to kill, by normal means at least. The Wampus cat would never be domesticated, but could and have been known to live in harmony with its environment, which was why Logan had suggested they try and allow it to roam once it was settled in. Harry then moved on to the chimera. They were bloodthirsty beasts with a lion's head, a goat's body and a dragon's tail. Harry described how they were endangering the local unicorns on Alfheim, and why Logan had had to go on many occasions to cull their numbers. Harry didn't mind, they had many parts Bruce appreciated having in abundance. Harry saw a look after mentioning this, and had to promise to send them the reports of what Sif had found out about their population boom. Something about another creature having moved to a different part of the continent. Next were the manticores. A manticore had the head of a human, the body of a lion, and the tail of a scorpion that will kill anyone instantly. While the manticores were able to speak understandable languages, they were also bloodthirsty and completely untrustworthy around other beings they could consider food. Fortunately, they didn't know they were being observed and simply lounged about in their enclosure. Finally came the Nundu. "Let me know if you see them," Harry said as he looked out of the viewing area. "What are we looking for?" T'Challa asked. "The Nundu look like gigantic leopards but with darker coloration." Harry replied. He looked out over the large grasslands with a couple of trees dotting the area. It didn't take long for T'Challa to spot one. There, he exclaimed, pointing off to the left. Harry soon spotted it too. Yup, that's one of them. Harry said, Anundu's breath is said to be toxic, carrying diseases that would kill any that come near it. We are protected here, so don't worry, he assured them. Bast, King T'Chaka exclaimed as he finally saw the massive creature. What our people would do to see what we see now, he wondered. True, T'Challa said. Then he turned to Harry. We have underestimated you. You're not so bad for a white boy, Shuri said with a smile. Thanks, I think, Harry responded, knowing it was a joke. Anyway, we can stay here a bit, but the dragons go on patrol soon and Jarvis would hate if you missed that. He arranged for the time specifically for that reason. The rest of the tour was relatively quiet, except for the hippogriff rides. First T'Challa went, and when he returned he told his father it was safe, who then went for his own flight. The guards had insisted that they follow them on the carpet though. The Queen declined, but Shuri also went for a flight. While they were on their way back to the bar, they saw the flight of dragons, with Logan sitting comfortably on Puppy's back and the younger dragons ranged out behind them in a V formation. It was an impressive sight, which is why Jarvis had arranged for it. The guests were even more impressed when Hela decided to make an appearance on her new steed, a particularly large and powerful male Thistral whom she had named Agnar. They had bonded as if they were made for each other, and Hela had even taken to caring for the slowly growing herd, of which Agnar was the leader. Harry had also noted her making fast friends with the Cerberus, which was apparently what Hagrid's guard dog / pet Fluffy had been. Not even Harry had known that until Sif brought in the one they had on the island and Logan found its identification in the library. It was still very small, only coming to Harry's shoulder. But it was getting along well with the other creatures and growing fast. Harry really hoped they could find it a mate at some point, but the one they had was rescued from captivity and nobody knew where it was from. They were also not taking very good care of it, which was why Logan had insisted that they take it. When they landed at the bar, Harry opened a portal for any who wanted to go home, and King T'Chaka and his wife Ramonda left. Shuri and T'Challa decided to stay when Harry mentioned magical liquor. The guards also decided to stay, ostensibly to protect their charges, even though they all knew the island was very well protected. Hela even joined them after Harry had Eldrin pour some shots for Shuri and T'Challa, so they could taste and appreciate the 3 different magical drinks now available. She had found a distinct liking for the fire whiskey, which wasn't really surprising. What was surprising, to Harry at least, was that she sometimes asked for Bahama Mama, which was now infused with Harry's latest addition to the elemental alcohol line. The first one is called fire whiskey and gives a burning sensation before leaving you with a feeling of calm, Harry explained as he pointed out the shots for them. The second is iced vodka. It physically cools you down for a time. The last is my latest magical achievement, Tempest Rum. It is infused with feelings of acceptance and a fresh tropical breeze. The stronger Asgardian version was called Frigga's Embrace and was quickly outstripping Loki's breath in popularity on Asgard. Truly a wonderful creation, Hela said as she took a sip of her own drink. Is this your divine calling, making magical infusions of otherwise more mundane things? Artifice and enchantment. Natasha reminded her, having decided to skip the tour this time and catching up on some paperwork while they were out instead. He doesn't like being called a god or divine though, rather call him blessed. Humility has its place, Hela relented, but he is a king and a prince of Asgard. The blessings he receives from this living island and the realm eternal, not to mention his other gifts, make him probably the most powerful entity in the galaxy, if not the universe. Until Thanos decides to come visit. Harry mumbled, "Is he still around?" Hela asked nonchalantly. "You know of him?" Harry asked, somehow not having thought that she'd have known of him. "He's been around for many thousands of years. Apparently he is a true immortal," she said. "Last rumor I heard, he was in love with Death Incarnate. We spoke to his daughters. He wants to restore balance to the universe by destroying half of all life." Harry argued, "It was just a rumor." Hela accepted. "Why do you mention him?" "Because he is apparently going to stop here on Midgard at some point soon." Natasha said, "We've been preparing for war, making allies everywhere we can, pumping out weapons and protections as fast as we can." "When were you planning on telling Wakanda about this threat?" T'Challa asked. Harry wanted to say, "When you're ready," but somehow thought that would not be well received. He didn't even know if they'd ever be ready, but the reports he had received about the scarcity of magic in the universe made him hopeful. "We've not been keeping anything from you, we've just not gotten to it yet. We're constantly working on setting up protections for the Earth. The Sorcerer Supreme has been working on setting up stronger protections, and sending people to our allies so that they can help bring all our forces to bear when the time comes. Natasha explained. Our space battleship Midnight has some truly fantastic and devastating offensive capabilities, some of which are so powerful we needed to hardwire limiters so that it cannot ever fire at the Earth or the Moon. Harry said. I also brought them some nifty scanners, which can detect power signatures from galaxies away and will help monitor this solar system for when anyone arrives. Rocket said, walking up to them. Groot, who had shot up in length following behind him playing the ever-present handheld game. It's not infallible, but it should help. And hi, by the way. Why is there a talking R? Shuri started, but Harry silenced her. He's not what you think he is. His species just looks a lot like what you're thinking, Harry said before unmuting her. Honestly, he wasn't really sure that Rocket wasn't just a modified raccoon. But he really didn't like being called that. His name is Rocket and his friend's name is Groot, Harry said, indicating the new arrivals. They are members of the Guardians of the Galaxy, a group of mercenary heroes who stopped Earth from becoming an extension of an ancient entity bent on universal domination. Hi, Groot. Harry finished with a greeting to the tree creature. I am Groot. Groot said, I'm going to see Samantha. Hi to you too, Harry grumbled. He turned to Rocket. Has he been getting worse? He's usually much more polite. Nah, that's still tame, Rocket said. He and Quill just had an argument about him never cleaning his room and everything being covered in vines. He just misses the nymphs. He'll be fine in a bit. Should I come cast a couple of cleaning spells? Harry offered. Nah, he'll clean up after himself once he grows out of this phase, Rocket assured Harry as he indicated for Eldrin to pour him a double, even as Eldrin put the double down on the table in front of him. How does he keep on doing that? Rocket asked. Eldrin has a slight affinity for divination, Natasha said. He can't predict stock market trends, but his skills do lend themselves to practical applications. It helps that you always order the same thing, she finished in her head, making him the world's best barman. Harry grumbled. It wasn't fair, it was his bar, but everyone preferred Eldrin's drinks. I'm sorry, my lord, Eldrin said with a cocky smile as he put a drink on the table for Shuri, before starting with one for T'Challa. Don't skill shame your barman, Harry, Natasha said with a playful smile. Just be glad he can't do any flavor shots. Oh, I'll get that enchantment one of these days, Harry threatened, and I'll be happy to serve those as well, my lord, Eldrin said, putting a martini in front of T'Challa. Harry could see some sort of citrus slices in the glass. Any flavor shots? Shuri asked. Natasha just shook her head in mock sadness. Now you've done it. What followed was a disgusting example of every flavor shots, with everyone having a shot, which Harry conjured except for the bodyguards. They were lucky in that the worst flavor they got was cement that time, the best flavor being caramel fudge. The idea of the possibility of tasting an emotion spurring Shuri on to try twice more, but stopping after her last shot tasted like pine cones, which wasn't bad, but apparently it left a flavor in her mouth she didn't like. T'Challa was impressed with the drink the elf had made for him, and when he inquired, Eldrin just smiled and said, I'm afraid it's a trade secret. Just like Harry had taught him, if they wanted more they could always come visit. They continued discussing the plans that were being made for the protection of Earth, and at some point Tony showed up and joined in with his plans, and what he knew of EPI's plans, which was a fair amount. Rocket loved this conversation as he was able to start talking about his favorite pastime, blowing stuff up. Natasha and Pepper soon separated from them and started discussing things, a mirror propped in front of them, probably making plans for the wedding with Laura Still. That in turn led to Frigga calling them, and another mirror joined the other on the counter as all three women started discussing the many plans, which Harry knew nothing about. He just knew he had to pay for everything. He was still in charge of the more magical aspects of the wedding, making Pepper jealous that she couldn't invite everyone she wanted to and have magic active at the party. She wasn't too concerned, though. She was certain she could have a magical wedding without actual magic. After a few short hours, Harry handed T'Challa an Avengers bracelet. This is a portkey, which will take you to the reception area at EPI. You are in our systems in both your Black Panther armor and without as an ally of EPI, so you'll be able to go there and home through the portals with the portkey. It can also take you to the Avengers mansion, if you ever want to train with us. You really want to do that? Tony said with a smile. We have our very own ART room. ART, like the training facilities my people keep telling me about, T'Challa asked. When Harry and Tony nodded, T'Challa nodded too. I'd like to see that for myself as well. Don't be a stranger then, Tony said as he made to order another drink just for one to appear in front of him. No offense, Harry, he said, turning to Harry and pointing at Eldrin, but I love this guy. He always knows when I need to change up what I'm drinking. I never get tired of showing up and always getting exactly what I need, even if I didn't know I wanted it. Sounds like you've got a bit of a crush. Natasha piped up from her side of the table with a wicked smile. Pepper had apparently also heard and was just laughing at his expense and whispering into the mirrors, likely relaying what Tony had said. Tony had played this game before and didn't miss a beat. If only I swung that way, he said with an air of melodrama. When Eldrin lifted an eyebrow and smirked at him, Tony's facade crumbled though, knowing that this elf was one of the straight ones. No offense, Eldrin. Why would I be offended, Mr. Stark? Eldrin asked. I told you to call me Tony. Tony said, why do you insist on calling me Mr. Stark? Because you are my lord's friend and as such you are above my station. Eldrin replied without hesitation. Why do you call him my lord? When he obviously prefers to be called by his first name, Shuri asked. Eldrin looked uncomfortable but hella shocked Harry by interceding. My brother prefers close friendships because of his difficult past in the same way as the elves prefer to treat him with respect for what he has done for them. Harry doesn't press the issue because he wants the elves to be happy, and if letting them treat him with respect achieves that, he can live with it. You seem to understand Harry pretty well for a new addition to the island, Tony said. How is it that you know him so well so quickly when in your first meeting you tried to kill him? Tony still didn't trust Hela. I thought you were his best friend, Hela replied. Surely you've noticed that Harry seldom lies either by his actions or words. I don't trust easily myself, so I've developed the ability to tell truth from lies. She lowered her head slightly and looked Tony dead in the eye. Just as you don't trust me because you care for your friend. I can only trust you because you don't trust me. It means you are smart and will be there for him when he makes mistakes. Are you confessing to being a mistake? Tony asked with narrowed eyes. Truth, Hela asked. I don't know, although I am quite fond of this island and its inhabitants, she admitted. Harry has proven to be a true cultivator of life, especially for one so closely marked by, let's not go telling all my secrets on one day, okay? Harry quickly interrupted. Some things are still considered private. Of course, Hela relented. If Harry wanted to keep certain things to himself, that was fine by her, so long as he didn't start lying. The evening didn't carry on too much longer after that. Hela had gone off to brush Agnar, which she did every day. Tony had meetings and T'Challa and Shuri needed to go speak to the king about what they had learned about Thanos. Harry and Natasha stayed up a bit later discussing the upcoming coronations. Since Harry had been invited to T'Challa's as well, they were separated by only a month. Thor's coronation was coming up at the end of January, T'Challa's at the end of February, and their wedding was at the end of March. They were looking forward to all of it. In the meanwhile, Harry was busy with some of his own plans. He was planning something big, and for it to succeed, he'd need Odin's help and a hell of a lot of power or quite a bit of time. He decided to be proactive. So he decided to double the size of his ring battery. It would take a lot of adamantite, so when they started the process of creating the metal, they invited Eitri to come and see the process in action. He was scanning the reaction in his own way as the metal changed and heated up as a result of the process. I think I see why you're losing so much metal during the change, he said. Really? Harry asked excitedly as he stepped closer, as if being closer to the process would allow him to see the problem. Really? Eitri grinned. Fortunately, the issue is simple for you to solve, at least it will be once you know the problem. What's the problem? Tony asked. The process isn't just creating the metal. Eitri explained. The process here, from what I can tell, was originally used to create energy from gold. The adamantite is more like a side effect, which is why so little is produced. I suspect the alchemist who created this process thought they might be able to use it to bolster their own magical power. But it doesn't produce magical power, Bruce argued. I've been monitoring this process every time and not once did I detect anything like Harry's power. That's because Harry's power is unique, it's got its own frequency. Eitri explained. You wouldn't know what to look for since you've only ever had Harry's energy to work with. He indicated the gold which was slowly shrinking inside the clear alchemical solution. This process has been modified as well. It's producing heat and air as well, rather than just magical energy, which has cut down on energy production heavily. It is possible that the person who originally made this didn't have the equipment you do and wouldn't be able to monitor the effects of the changes in the formula, but the solution is simple. Eitri said, looking at Bruce with a challenge in his eyes. Give me a moment here, Tony said as he considered the problem too. He'd also memorized the process and knew what each part of the equation did in the formula. Bruce beat him to it a minute later. We have to modify the formula to reduce the heat generated and block the magic from escaping. Almost, Eitri said, shaking his head. Harry surprised them by speaking up first. You have to induce magic from outside rather than letting it produce magic. Of course, Bruce exclaimed. He turned to Tony, who was frowning. It's called alchemy and not science or potions because magic is actively used. In potions, you use the magic that's already there in the ingredients. Alchemy is the art of inducing a change in the formula by adding magic externally. Tony finally nodded. It makes sense. He turned to Eitri. I thought you weren't an alchemist. Eitri just shook his head as he sat down next to Harry, who had started feeding magic into the potion. I'm not, but I could tell what was happening and I am quite experienced with magic and metal. He turned to Harry. That's a bit much. Try and slow the flow a bit. Harry complied and Eitri nodded. You're still going to lose a bit of the metal until you can change the equation to remedy the heat and air problem. But until then, I suspect you'll be happier with the results you are experiencing now. Harry could tell that it was working as the feel of the metal changing was different now. He still couldn't believe he didn't realize there was more magic in the air. He had attributed the feeling to the potion they were using. I'll probably have to create an enchantment for the correct amount of power to be introduced to the process so that I don't need to be present. Won't the enchantment lose power too quickly that way? Eitri asked, intrigued. Nah, he'll just set it up to use MSC shells. Tony said, what's that? Eitri asked. A smaller version of my ring. Harry clarified, until you share your technology with us you're not getting any. He said with an evil smirk. Eitri actually looked tempted. A power source for this kind of magic might be something he'd need for his studies into the Sword of Gryffindor. He pulled himself together though, maybe somewhere in the future. He conceded. Until then maybe I'll just start making adamantite and funnel its magical production. If I can have the formula once you perfect it. What do we get out of the deal? Tony asked before anyone could agree. Well, we do have a lot of gold and we don't need adamantite. Eitri tried. Tony considered it before responding. You'll need the ingredients too since you don't have access to them on your ring. I tell you what, I'll go do the math and get back to you. Eitri nodded. He had no doubt that they could come to an agreement, as long as they didn't want Uru, which he was very loath to part with in its raw form. Until then I'll be back at Nidavellir. I'm still busy with that sword. All right, Harry said, waving at him. And thank you for your help. I think you just cracked alchemy for us. Bruce was nodding along. Yes, thank you. I've got so many ideas I want to try now. He would help Eitri get ingredients if what he suspected about alchemy turned out to be true. He'd just need Harry to create an enchantment, and Tony to create a room-controlled system that would allow him to change the flow of magic. He was brimming with ideas, all the way from new potions to new applications and new delivery systems. Hank would be pleased that they had another way to modify potions. Maybe they could finally crack the dry potion barrier and start producing real pills. It is always a pleasure to help my friends, Eitri said with a smile. Oh, and Harry, he started, your barrels of Asgardian-grade fire whiskey and Frigga's Embrace will be delivered to you before the end of the day. Harry nodded. It was the payment they agreed on if Eitri was able to help them, which he was. Apparently Eitri wasn't the stingy kind either. He had shared what he had received from Harry before, which was why Harry planned on surprising Eitri with appropriately sized barrels. Once Eitri left, Harry turned to see Tony looking at him with a look and a smile Harry didn't trust on his face. What? He asked. Do you realize what the original alchemist figured out? Tony asked. What? Harry asked, not having an idea. E=mc2. Bruce answered for him. Exactly, Tony said. If we can figure out what this guy was trying, if Eitri is right, we might end up creating the equivalent of a magical nuclear reactor. Better, we wouldn't need to have it go through a process to generate the power. This is direct. Bruce corrected. What? Harry repeated himself a third time, but this time in incredulity. Is that even possible? Harry, we've already proven that energy and mass can have equivalent exchange. Tony said, if what Eitri said is true. We could make a device that can charge your giant battery in hours, rather than months. It's also highly likely, since gold was valued a lot as an alchemical substance back then. If we stick to gold, we can tap a resource we have a lot of too. And we won't need to modify the equation to work on a new element. Bruce agreed. Do you know what this means? Tony said, having walked up to Harry to shake his arms. Nuo, Harry said slowly. Tony had a look of madness in his eyes. If we can make magical energy, and we already know how to convert magical energy to electrical power, Tony began, we can use this process to create power a fraction of the cost with no radioactive byproducts or waste. Bruce said, catching on. Tony, this is big, he said with a look of dawning understanding. Yeah, this is big, Tony exploded, and there's so much we can still try after that. If we can make a process that takes matter and turns it into power, we might be able to do the reverse. Bruce was shaking his head. While I agree with you that that is possible, it would take many years to figure out how to do it. So we can't plug in a device that prints food using only electricity. Fine, Tony said excitedly. But it's in sight now, isn't it? This will still happen in our lifetimes. Harry was completely lost. He understood what they meant, but he didn't know how they would even attempt it. So we can agree that that isn't the priority right now. Fine, spoil my fun. Tony grumbled. They had bigger fish to fry after all. But I get to tell Pepper about this, and we're having couples night later this week and having fun thinking of the possibilities. They did end up discussing it later that week. Bruce and Sif even joined them on this particular evening when Bruce couldn't help but want to be part of that conversation. He had even already fixed the formula for the alchemical conversion. He hadn't slept, but he had fixed it. They were just waiting on Harry to finish the enchantment work for the initial test. Tony was also working on creating an alchemy set using runes with a connection for an MSC shell. It would be able to adjust the flow of magical power using a control system much like the ones he had made for the flying cars. Speaking of which, the plan had been enacted to deliver emergency vehicles to the major cities of North America. Jarvis had done the planning for that. The amount of vehicles were different for every city, as the size of each city and yearly crime rates, fires, and medical response indicated. Tony had led the first demonstrations of each vehicle for the people that were sent for training. First, the police vehicles. All of them were the size of a large van, big enough for a full SWAT team. They were basically indestructible and had strategically placed windows from which an officer or multiple officers could fire if the situation demanded it. Unbeknownst to them, Harry had enchanted the windows to not allow projectiles to enter from outside. This would be a safety feature they didn't know about. The fire trucks were as large as their predecessors, but with a large amount of space dedicated for extracting victims in case of emergency. After all, what was the point of a flying emergency vehicle that didn't allow for extraction? Every door on them had detectors for fire and would release a strong mist spray of water when opened near a fire. This would help facilitate extractions as well. Each fire truck was also outfitted with 3 mounted water cannons and 3 hoses for use in situations where there was no line of sight. Where the water came from was explained away as a new development from EPI, and strong warnings were given about trying to open the devices to find out how they worked. The ambulances looked like they usually did, but were outfitted with hovering gurneys that locked in pace on the ambulance in such a way as to minimize movement in cases where patients could not be jostled. It was explained to them that the gurneys needed proximity to the ambulance to stay afloat, which was true and would ensure nobody tried to steal them, which was a genuine worry, even though every one of them had a tracker embedded in them, just in case. The fact that every ambulance carried multiple of them was just a bonus, and would help facilitate patient transfers in the most expedient and safe manner. Harry was looking forward to the day they could set up emergency services the world over with discs that could simply put patients in stasis and transport them. They were not there yet, though. As for what the vehicles ran on, a power supply for every one of them was to be installed by EPI staff at the police stations, fire departments, and hospitals. Said power supplies were powered by MSC shells and would need to be replaced periodically. Their power supplies were monitored remotely, and EPI would be in charge of replacing the shells. When asked why this wasn't being made available to the public or government, Tony told them that this was a trial run. The technology was new and the government did not have the resources to monitor and control the traffic that allowing too many people access to these vehicles would generate. There were more objections, of course, but they were told that they could accept the training and receive the benefits they were being offered or leave empty-handed. That shut them up quite quickly. The government did not necessarily like that attitude and started ordering local law enforcement to send their vehicles to them. When said vehicles disappeared from government facilities, never to be seen again, people stopped listening to them. The president received a call from an irate Director Fury. Suffice it to say, nobody associated with the current administration tried again. That does not mean that people stopped trying, but that's when Tony's surprise kicked in. He had set up a connection to Friday in every vehicle, and when one was stolen, as was bound to happen, it stopped responding to input and flew the driver directly to the local authorities with recordings and everything Friday could find on the perpetrators already sent to their department. Harry had fun appearing as Ghost to retrieve the hostages that had been taken to force the driver to steal the vehicle. The vehicles that had been taken from the government were finally replaced. Tony had wanted to follow through like they had done in China, but Harry didn't want to do that again, not while the police vans could have helped many people already. Tony still made a public statement that second chances only came around the one time, and hinted strongly after the army being involved with them taking the vehicles away in the first place. While EPI and Stark Industries was working on improving the world, yet again another meeting was taking place somewhere in the universe. A purple figure on a floating stone throne faced away from the supplicant. "And you are certain you can achieve this?" the figure asked. "I have everything set up, but I'll need your guarantee," the supplicant stated. "I've heard boasts of this kind before," the giant said. "What makes you so certain you will succeed?" Like I said, I have everything set up. Once my trap is sprung, I'll have access to what you want. The supplicant stated, I also know the source of their power and I intend to claim it for myself. The throne slowly turned as the figure turned to look at the supplicant with a smile that promised death. And you think you have what it takes to steal from him? I have faced him before, so I know I cannot do it with a show of force. The supplicant stated, instead, I'm going to use my other skills to infiltrate and subdue him. I've been reliably informed that it can be done if he's caught off guard. The big purple man looked at the person before nodding. Fine. You may attempt to claim your power, but I will not delay my plans for you. If you fail, my plans will continue. If you succeed, you will gain immunity for yourself and any realm of your choosing for when the inevitable happens. She didn't realize that he was lying. The supplicant smiled, a glint of madness in her green eyes. Oh, I'll succeed and I'll take that little bitch of his apart before his very eyes for humiliating me. Amora was a woman scorned, and she had been patiently waiting and planning her next move. The fact that she had had to work in the shadows for so long would make her vengeance only taste sweeter.